Welcome to another stream. The challenge today is to not get restricted unfairly by TikTok. So, welcome in. To not get restricted by TikTok today, that is the challenge. So, I guess I have to try and not be repetitive, which I think is incredibly unfair. If I've got 60 people watching, let me talk how I want to talk. Anyway, so I'm going to have to avoid calls to action today. Not ask people to join and debate, but just let them, I guess. I think that's incredibly wrong of TikTok to force that onto me, but that's what it is. Okay, so I guess we'll just start talking. Ooh, that person definitely needs to be banned. Right, so, extinctionism. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about activism that we're doing today. So I've made a video today about how animal rights are impossible. You can't have equal, you can't really have human rights and the same sort of level of protections for animals. It's a physical impossibility, legal impossibility, practically impossible. You're not going to have rights for plankton. You're not going to have any serious rights for, fish at the bottom of the ocean, birds in the sky. You can't give them the same sort of protections that humans get, which is, I think the most fundamental one would be, right to some degree of safety, right? Animals can never really truly be safe from each other. You might be able to protect a dog from going after a cat, but how are you going to protect plankton from being eaten by a whale? It's just absurd, right? And as Steve likes to point out, if you threw some bones from a goldfish into someone's garden, are you going to get thrown into jail while the investigation gets carried out? Because that's what would happen if it were a human. They wouldn't just take the chance and say, well, let's allow them to run freely while we investigate. No, they would throw you straight into jail for the duration of the investigation. And so it just immediately collapses as being vaguely feasible. You can't have post-mortems on every animal that's found, right? I mean, I saw a squirrel that had been run over today, and is anyone going to do a post-mortem on it and determine if it was run over by accident or on purpose? So you could maybe have mass surveillance, but even then, it's just how are you going to have surveillance in the ocean, right? There's no sunlight down there for most of it. Don't think those cameras would work. Now, it's possible that my stream is still heavily restricted because usually I get more people joining than we have today. The restriction yesterday was absolutely absurd. It just nuked the entire stream for no reason. And unfortunately, there's actually no other platform in the world that comes even remotely close to TikTok in terms of streaming. I've looked into it. There's just absolutely nothing. And definitely nothing that has the same guest features that TikTok has. So we're going to wait for people to do their thing, and we're also going to have to force ourselves to use colourful vocabulary to avoid being restricted by TikTok for monotonous calls to engagement. So effectively, I'm not allowed to ask people to come and debate me. It's just ridiculous. So I'm just going to have to talk and, wait for people to do that and not encourage them. Thanks, TikTok. That's really helpful. So today I've already made one video about how equal animal rights is impossible. So, for example, animal liberation, vegans, anti-speciesists. Um, it's an illusion. It's a myth. It's a fantasy. You're never going to have equal rights for all life forms on the planet. You're going to have to choose which animals you prefer, right? You might have some rights for dogs, but what rights are you going to have for plankton? Like, the only right that makes sense is extinction, right? Preventing life from being born into dangerous and cruel conditions. I mean, that's kind of the right that some people want for humans, right? But they don't want to extend it to animals, which is wrong. That's why antinatalism is a self-defeating ideology. It's people that have realized that the world is too dangerous for them to bring a child into, but they won't help anyone else avoid that same horrible fate, or dangerous fate at the very least. It's dangerous for the vast majority, right? And so I'm also making a video today on Punch the Monkey, who is very correctly named. His name is literally Punch the Monkey. And yeah, kind of ironic, because that's what happens to him every day. He gets punched. Punch the Monkey is a 7-month-old baby monkey in a zoo in Japan. And he essentially gets bullied, tortured, bitten, punched, attacked, and he even gets swung around and thrown into walls, like in the film Matilda, right? Like, just insane levels of bullying. The kind of stuff that you wouldn't get expelled for at school, you'd get sent to prison, even as a kid. James, you're not Thanos, bro. Okay, but I'm smarter than you then, I guess, if I can say that babies shouldn't be forced to exist and get abused. And even Thanos wasn't saying that. Thanos was just a clown that thought if we just reduce overpopulation, then everything will be better. So overpopulation is nothing to do with extinctionism. There could be a population of one individual, and that would still be too many, right? So it's nothing to do with Thanos. Now, I'm not allowed to apparently ask people to join and debate me, but maybe my moderators in the chat can encourage it. But I'm not allowed to, due to TikTok's absolutely absurd rules. So until that happens, I'm just going to have to wait for someone to do it themselves. Okay, we've got someone. Hello, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Before we start, what do you mean absurd rules about debating a topic? Is it just the topic in general?
No, it's just that I'm not allowed to ask people to come on and debate now, because I did, obviously that's a simple thing to do, an obvious thing to do, but TikTok will restrict me if I say that, which is just
Really?
absurd.
That's a new one. I haven't heard that one. Interesting.
It's insane.
You've been restricted by that?
Oh yeah. Yesterday I had nearly 40 people watching, and just for saying that simple line, which I'm trying to avoid saying,
Yeah, of course.
nuked my stream.
That's crazy.
I know.
It's getting weird, man.
It's bullshit. Anyway, would you like to discuss the above topic?
I'm trying to find a good way to debate this. I mean, you brought up that example, and I'm like, damn, you got a good point. Because my mind was immediately going, you can't have life without suffering, and you can't suffer without having a life. Like because it's a cycle. Everything to the even the most microbial creature has to suffer in order to move forward, I guess, or evolve, or So I mean, because life itself is suffering. I mean, you're unaliving the second you're born. Your lungs are oxidizing. You grow. You age. So I guess what would you define as suffering? Let's put it that way. In a general sense.
Bad experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
But most people that ask this question they're just kind of Their thinking is stubbing your toe suffering. But if you kind of just
No, no,
think of
I'm talking about serious. Like, I'm thinking about all the things that have happened throughout history that have had immense suffering. Like, and you can probably think of a few examples I can't even say on this live. And then you
yeah,
think
I'd
about
say that you don't even need to go into specifics. We can
yeah, no,
just think of
generally.
the concept of the worst life ever lived, right? It must
Hmm.
be just insanely bad, right? But that's what most people don't think about, right? They don't consider the worst off victims. They prioritize having fun and pleasure, and they say don't be negative, right? Whereas actually being negative is paying attention to those that need help the most. But for most people, that's too depressing to think about, and it ends up, condemning these victims to the worst experiences.
Some of the stuff I've witnessed firsthand, and some people I've talked to in some pretty messed up situations and predicaments, I couldn't even think to understand, their suffering. I've had my suffrages in my past, and everyone's different, and then there are worse things than other things. Um, but I've also met people in those situations who, despite all the suffering, are some of the most, how do I put it? Some of the most, like you can either turn into a villain, or you can take your suffering and you make it your strength. You know what I mean?
For the lucky ones, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, I've met a lot of lucky ones. A lot of other ones that just I would chalk it up to life sucks. That's a hard way to put it, but that's how
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it.
I'd
Yeah.
say you have lucky ones and unlucky ones, right?
Yeah.
But we have to think about the unlucky ones.
Draw the cards, but you can think about them.
But no,
But
we have to
it's
actually help them, right? Instead of ignoring them.
well, I mean, there's a lot of people suffering you can't help because their suffering is due to their own actions. Like
We can help everyone if we have total extinction, though, right?
well, what about the lucky ones that don't want to be extinct?
Well, if they're going to selfishly
Help
cling
them
on to their pleasure at the expense of, babies getting tortured, then, they shouldn't have the right to do that.
to have a life.
Yeah, I mean, there's no great meaning to life,
Yeah,
really.
but what
You're
about
running
the babies
around,
that are
having
tortured?
fun, you're watching Netflix, you're brain rotting, maybe. But even those lucky ones are still in extreme danger.
Yeah. Well, what about the lucky babies?
Well, it's wrong. Essentially, it's unfair, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if your parents ever told it to you, but it's pretty much been the one of those phrases I've heard growing up my whole life: is life is unfair.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
But it's what you do with it that counts. That's what.
Yeah, you stop unfair things, you stop bad things, right?
Yeah,
You
I'm gonna
make sure
try
that
to avoid
no
it.
no victim ever has to be tortured ever again. That's the right thing to do.
Until it gets to a point where it's not as bad, but even little things, like you say, stubbing your toe would be bad.
That's not a practical possibility, though. That's not realistic. There's
I don't
no
know.
world
I would.
where
I'm not saying it
plankton
doesn't happen
is
today.
stubbing your
Obviously, it
toe and
happens.
not getting eaten.
I would say a lot of bad things are still happening today. But if you take history in the chunks it's been in, would you say that things are getting better?
No.
Why is that?
I would say that there's higher competition for humans, more stress, right? More pressure on them.
Well, the
Far more
environment's
pressure.
changed. Yes, I would agree with that. It's different. It's completely. It's a different environment, than it was 150 years ago.
There's a lot more competition and stress and pressure, but for the vast majority of life, things have never changed, and that's animals, right? Their suffering has never improved. So we have to think about the majority of life and not just discriminate against them by focusing only on humans. That would be wrong.
So how do you do that?
Well, yeah, basically we cause as much extinction and as fast and thorough as possible to prevent lives from being forced to exist and experience, horrible lives, essentially.
And you wouldn't count that as a part of life.
Count what? Terrible? Yeah, I would definitely count terrible things as a part of life, and that's why it has to be stopped.
was going to try to take the cold, cynical approach to this one.
Well, why should anyone have to suffer, right?
Well, cold, cynical approach to it would be that you couldn't have happiness without suffering.
That's not a cold, cynical approach. That's just reality. That's fact,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true.
So, we have to help the victims and prevent their terrible suffering at any cost. It's the right thing to do. Why should babies get
Yeah, so
tortured?
how do you do the right thing in a system environment that doesn't care for that? It just exists. It's kind of like
Well, humanity has kind of controlled its environment since the dawn of intelligence, right?
well, sort yeah, yeah, we're getting there.
Well,
Almost
no, I
about
mean, we control the entire planet. We control space. We control the forest. We're causing mass deforestation for agriculture and stuff like that. We control animal populations at will, essentially. We have a lot of control. So, like, farmed animals, they only exist because we breed them, and there's a ginormous population of them. So, causing extinction for farmed animals is, absurdly feasible, right? Extremely feasible, because it's something that we're actively doing already, right? So, in that sense, it's easy to acknowledge that we could, turn that tap off because we created that tap. But in the same way, we can extend that to all life, to protect all life from being forced into existence non-consensually, and from the extreme suffering and harm that comes as a result.
well, we couldn't do much because whatever we do is still going to cause suffering. Even helping causes suffering.
Yeah, but you can't cause more suffering than you prevent, right? We're talking
Yeah,
about billions of years of more suffering, right? So you have to think about the insane amount of suffering that would happen over that time, right? So is completely impossible to cause more suffering in any way, shape, or form
yeah. Do
compared
something
to
good, it can cause
preventing.
suffering. Bad, it can cause suffering. I mean, just trying to live your life can cause suffering because it's like you think about
Yeah,
on
we
the
should just have a zero tolerance policy on suffering, essentially.
yeah, but I mean, it's just not how life works.
I agree, and that's wrong,
Well, there are moments
right?
in my life if I hadn't suffered when I did, I wouldn't be the person I am today. That's the difference. Is
But why should babies get abused and tortured so that
no,
you
my
can
my
be the
question is
person
what
you are?
my question would be why is it that people have different reactions to suffering where some will be stronger because what I think I find unfair is that someone can go through a traumatic event, suffer, and be perfectly fine. They're not, of course, not perfectly fine, but then you have someone else who goes through and takes a negative approach, either unalives himself or because the trauma was too much. Like what sets that bar? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, you're just focusing on the lucky ones, right? You're not
No, those are lucky
considering,
ones.
the babies.
Those are
Yeah,
lucky
you're
ones.
focusing on the lucky ones. No,
No,
you
it's
are.
how they. No, it's how they've processed
No,
their suffering.
no,
It's
no.
not
It's
lucky.
nothing to do with processing, right?
It's got
A
nothing to do with
baby
luck.
that gets eaten alive until it's dead, it's not going to have any sort of balance or philosophy about it, right? It just gets forced to exist, tortured, and then killed cruelly, right? So, what you're saying has absolutely no application to the vast majority of life on this planet. You're focusing on the top 0.1%, the extremely lucky ones. So that same ignorance and
No, it's not. I'm
willful
trying to.
willful ignorance is
Everything's
what
just.
sustains all of this torture for these babies, right?
It's not willful ignorance. I'm not ignorant. I understand it happens. It's not about. It's a matter of out of
But
my
you're
control.
saying you're trying to
Because
twist it into you're warping it into, oh, it's just processing, right? Some people deal with it better, but
no,
that's just
you don't have to.
completely invalid.
Well, the gazelle that gets eaten by the lion feeds the lion, right? Gazelle suffers, but the lion lives, and the lion has cubs, and the cubs live, and the process repeats itself. You can go down. I mean, you can go down to a microscopic level where cells destroy each other to live essentially because it's a battleground. I think the naivety of thinking that life isn't a battleground, that's just what life is. Because even like you said, it's just a different environment today. It's not as brutal as it was, but it's brutal in a different way.
I think you're being very naive, right? You're
No, I'm
talking
not.
about, well, you are, because
Well,
you're
you're
talking
you're just
about
saying
the
destroy all
top.
life. So I don't
You're
know.
talking about
Something
you're
living
talking.
would good.
So that guy was talking about, the top 0.1%, if that, probably far less than that. The top 0.00001% of life, maybe even less than that, right? He's just willfully ignoring the animals that are being tortured to death, right? And saying that they just need to cope better. It's disgusting. Okay, let's have someone up.
Hey man, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. Yeah, I'd like to start with the animals if you don't mind.
Sure.
Would you agree that most of human suffering comes from conscious imagination?
No,
Is it you don't agree?
no.
So you wouldn't agree that most suffering that is endured by human beings comes from either anxiety or some sort of imaginatory preparation for things to come. You would say that you think most suffering that human beings endure comes from external and physical sources?
I wouldn't discriminate, I wouldn't try and,
Well, I'm asking you a question
downplay.
to differentiate
Yeah, I
because,
wouldn't try to differentiate, right?
well, I understand
Extinctionism
that
is
why that's
about
convenient
not
for your position.
discriminating
Go
and
ahead.
saying that no one deserves to suffer. It's about not trying to say this suffering is okay, they deserve to suffer, and this suffering is not okay, right? It's no one deserves to suffer at all.
Yeah,
All
but I'm
suffering
not.
is
I'm not
wrong.
saying anyone deserves to suffer. I'm just asking you. The reason I'm asking this question, right, is because if a person acknowledges that most suffering that human beings endure comes from their mind, at that point, right, the conversation about animals becomes significantly more nuanced because animals don't have the same capacity consciously to predict or imagine
So,
future
so
events.
you are just trying to defend their suffering and justify it, right?
No, I'm not.
So
Again, I think
what's
you're
your
mis.
point then?
So you're creating a false
What's your point?
distinction. So again, let me just finish, please.
Well,
You're
you
creating
better.
you're creating a false distinction between me creating a line of realism between the actual suffering that occurs, as in if you're creating a false dichotomy that animals
I'm asking
experience the
what's your
same amount.
point, right? There is no false
I
dichotomy. All
I just
suffering
told
is
you.
bad, and no one's deserved to suffer. And
I
trying to
never
make
argued that anyone deserves
excuses
to
and
suffer.
defend suffering is wrong, right?
Yeah, I'm not defending suffering.
So what are you doing?
Actually, I'll defend human suffering, not animal suffering.
So, okay, what?
Yeah, yeah.
No, we're not really about defending
You're gonna.
suffering and saying that some deserve to suffer and others don't, right? That's evil. That's wrong. It's disgusting, morally reprehensible. And trying to say that this suffering's okay, this suffering's not as bad, it's disgusting, okay? It's wrong, inaccurate as well. You're essentially trying to fantasize about some suffering and say it's not as bad. But that's at the expense of the victims that you're downplaying, ignoring, and essentially devaluing, right? You're just trying to devalue their suffering to defend it and justify it. That's wrong and inaccurate, right? So it's wrong in every way, shape, and form. Okay. Hello, how's it going?
Quick question. Do you think the people you just kicked without their consent suffered?
Um, maybe. I don't really think about, silly things like that.
Some disgusting suffering and you kind of justify it yourself. Just like you just made that point, you kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, suffering is absolutely justifiable if it's in the pursuit of the greater good.
Cool. Cool. So what is the
If that
definition?
weren't the case, then, essentially we would just have to stop existing. But that would cause more suffering as a result of not being able to help, right? So it's just completely nonsense to say that it's wrong to cause any suffering in the pursuit of ending suffering. That's actually a tool used by the oppressors to try and get out of ending suffering and to keep it going.
I'm going to repeat my question for a third time. What's the difference between justifiable suffering and unjustifiable suffering?
I would say that, there's suffering that you can't do anything about, essentially, and that has to happen for the sake of the greater good. So if we have to kick someone that's wasting our time and they suffer, then that's the right thing to do.
Greater good you're talking of?
So our movement is working towards the greater good of eliminating all suffering, preventing billions of years of more tragic and unacceptable suffering.
How does ending the possibility of more joy in people's lives, how does your distinction, your choice for other people to cause them the suffering of death justify your greater good? I don't see the greater good in that.
Well, firstly, we're not necessarily going to be causing suffering and death, right? And secondly, life is already doing that on a far worse scale than anything that we could do, right?
Fulfilling life. I don't understand what extinct means for your definition.
It means undoing the mistake of extreme suffering and preventing it.
What you're saying, right? Is that the core argument? All life must end to stop all suffering? I'm sorry, you're lagging a bit. I can't hear you.
Sure. Most of the victims we want to help are in the future, so it's mostly about prevention.
So you're going to prevent beautiful experiences, joy, happiness, bliss in the future for your idea of preventing hypothetical suffering in the future. When you already said suffering is part of life, so it's something we can expect.
Hypothetical? No, not hypothetical suffering. That would be silly, right?
Hypothetical. Future suffering is hypothetical. Suffering is only in the past and in the present.
But what about the hypothetical joy and beauty and all that nonsense, right? That's hypothetical too, right?
Say that again. Repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, all of that beauty and joy, all of that nonsense in the future, that's hypothetical too. So your point is completely moot and self-contradicting.
No, it's not moot at all. No, we can.
It is.
Sure. I'm saying there is going to be suffering in the future. You've said suffering is a condition of life.
It's not hypothetical then.
Okay, but
hypothetical suffering, babies getting abused. It's not a hypothetical, mate. Okay, this is reality.
So you think that killing all good parents who don't abuse babies is justifiable to kill parents who do abuse babies? So that way we can.
We're actually against killing. Euthanasia is the sort of ethical way to go about things, right? Like, for example, a vet doesn't kill a poorly dog; they euthanize it.
That's okay. Then it's just semantics. So
no, there's a big difference, right? So we're not going around murdering. Euthanasia is the responsible thing, responsible sort of option, essentially. Vets don't go around committing murder. Sure, if you're doing it for ethical and responsible reasons, then the term is euthanasia.
Sure. Okay. So let's use it. Let's use the nice thing then. You think it's fair and justified to euthanize a good parent because there is a bad parent next door and their children? You think that's justifiable? Because that's your argument. All life should be made extinct to stop unfair suffering. So that means the good people have to die or be euthanized safely or sanely, however you want to say it, but they stop living so that way the bad parents don't have the chance to be bad. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, those good people could change their mind and become bad people as well, right? Or they could suffer themselves. So it's really just about a zero tolerance policy on suffering and how to achieve that in a practical way. So, all of these, complaints that you're raising, essentially they're actually reducing suffering and minimizing it, right? So you have to do certain things in order for the greater good, for the victims. And also, life isn't really a blessing or well-being. It's actually a curse. It exposes you to unlimited risk of extreme suffering and torture and all manner of terrible things that you never consented to begin with.
Absolutely. Do you think if you ended all life do you think life is unique to Earth alone?
No.
Okay, so then it would be practically, since you're looking for practical solutions, impossible to end life in the universe. because life
Why?
is just a natural function of the universe, because you can't end the universe. We do not have the
Why not?
technology. What technology do we have to explode the universe?
We don't have technology to do it.
So you're talking about practical solutions. How is the
Yeah.
practical solution to end life in the universe when life is a natural function in the universe, and there could be life at other planets away that we don't know about? So how can you end life practically? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So just because we don't have the method now doesn't mean that we can't create a method.
Sure, but if life is a natural function of the universe, if you can't destroy all of the universe, then life will naturally reappear.
Well, I never said that we can't.
Well, we can't today, and your
That's
you're
correct.
hopeful that we can tomorrow.
Yeah.
But so, do you think that'll happen in our lifetimes,
Not
or in
necessarily.
the lifetime of this movement? Do you think it'll happen? What's the timeline for universal destruction to make sure that life for the anti-equation, essentially?
Well, we wouldn't give you a timeline.
Well, then that's not very practical, is it?
Well, actually, I would say it's much more practical than having some fantasy timeline.
What would be practical about waiting for something that you don't know is going to happen instead of just embracing the suffering?
Waiting. Well, we're not about waiting. So, you're misrepresenting us, right? We have to create those methods. You can't just sit on your hands and hope it will happen, right?
Then I'm guessing you're finishing your PhD in physics to help understand how you can destroy all life or physiology. I'm sure you're working hard towards that progress for the
Have
anti-life.
you ever seen like a charity event for fundraising for cancer research or something, right? The people that are doing that activism, they're not scientists, right? But they're still helping to make the science possible, right? So would you go and tell those fundraisers, get off the streets, you're not scientists, wind your neck in?
We're funding for research now, today, with timelines for diseases that they're investigating now.
Timelines? No. That's nonsense. No, no one is committing to imaginary timelines, right? Because that would be dishonest, right?
But cancer research commits to timelines, not imaginary ones, real ones. Part of their
Maybe in your head, maybe in your imagination, okay? But maybe in your imagination, but not in real life, okay? Maybe in your imagination, and you can go and continue that imagination elsewhere. Okay, so let's continue. Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
I've just got one question. I mean, if the argument is essentially that we should all go extinct to stop suffering, then why aren't you out there now just like killing people, and why haven't you killed yourself already?
Yeah, great question. Obviously, if activists were to disappear, then the cause and movement would disappear, right? And secondly, random acts of violence, we are strongly against that because it would cause chaos, it would cause more suffering. It's not an organized or responsible or ethical way to do anything. And it also wouldn't cause any form of extinction, right? So that's completely contradictory. We have to do it in an organized way.
I think it would, because it would just follow that thing would be good, right? If you're lowering suffering and there is people who suffer innately and you just go and kill that person, that wouldn't even be murder because you're doing it for a higher level good in your own view, right?
I mean, no, not really, because again, I would get arrested. I wouldn't be able to carry on doing activism. That doesn't help animals. It would be a drop in the ocean compared to the real problem, essentially. So, we're totally against that.
Yeah, you can say it's not pragmatic, but it's what is justified for you to just kill yourself and kill other people. That would be justified.
No.
Why not? If extinction is the best thing to stop this unfair suffering, then why wouldn't you do that? All you're saying is it's not pragmatic.
It's not practical. It's not pragmatic. Yeah, it's silly. So, one immediate way
this whole argument just a bit silly?
No.
So how are you going to go about extincting people when you're not ready to kill anyone and you're not going to kill yourself?
Well, we don't actually want humanity to go extinct anyway. Humanity is the vehicle for preventing animal suffering and suffering for all other life, essentially. So humanity has to stay strong. healthy and powerful. We need a strong, powerful vehicle to help others, essentially, before we can close the door behind ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but it seems like you're just changing your entire view now from not going extinct to actually being almost like some existentialist that wants better for humanity rather than it to just stop existing. I thought that was your argument.
No, I mean, extinctionism is about achieving as little suffering for as much life as possible, right? And that mostly means prevention, okay? So it's not about killing or even euthanizing, really. The vast majority of the victims we want to help are in the future. They haven't been born yet. They're, waiting to be born and tortured, and we need to prevent it.
I understand. So you're like an anti-natalist, essentially.
No, antinatalists it's a self-defeating ideology. Again, that's opting out of the system. It's not fighting the system, right?
So you do want people to be born into suffering, right?
Yeah. The thing is, every human that exists and gets born prevents millions of wild animals from being born to suffer. So it's actually a net positive in that sense. Plus, humanity is the only species capable of providing extinction for other animals. So it's our moral obligation to stay around and make that happen. It could take thousands of years. So humanity has to stay around to help, others.
I mean, well, firstly, you are not trying to stop unfair suffering because you're bringing beings into the world that didn't ask to be here and they are going to suffer. And secondly, 99% of all species were extinct before humans even came about.
But yeah, I mean, there's still billions of years of future suffering that needs to be prevented, right? And if you've got a practical way to achieve total extinction without bringing more humans into the world, then I'd love to hear it.
I think it's the opposite. I think, like what you were saying, I think we should work towards this better world in which, like, we develop some type of ethical system, some type of economic system in which we can achieve some type of quality. But that would not be going towards, like, saying anything should go extinct, right? Because we have to recognize that suffering is going to be kind of part of an innate part of life, and we should hope to reduce it, but not.
Why do we have to accept it?
Other humans.
Why should we accept babies to be tortured?
We shouldn't. That's what I'm saying. We should strive. We should strive against that. But for babies to exist, which is a good, we run the risk of them.
Why is it good?
What, babies to exist?
Yeah.
Because goodness only exists within humanity.
Within what?
Within humanity. Like good and bad is an abstract concept, so these things rely upon humans, like value. Like a human would be innately valuable because value itself.
So if an animal is getting tortured, that's not a bad thing in your opinion?
No.
Well, that's just silly. Why?
Why should I care about an animal? I care about humans who actually have consciousness and the ability to deploy it.
But animals have consciousness and feelings as well.
Yeah, not to our level though. Like they have the ability to act abstractly and carry out moral goods. So why would I value them? They're not moral agents.
Because they can feel pain and suffer, right? So they need help just as much as anyone else.
No, but you're equating them with a human. If you're going to equate them with a human, why wouldn't you have sex with an animal?
I'm not equating them to a human. I'm just saying that they also suffer.
Yeah, so there is a difference, right? So
it would be better for the animals not to suffer, right? So
yeah, I can agree with you, but like I said to you before, like there is a higher level good, right? I can accept that there is going to be some innate part of suffering. You're saying we should extinct all of that and remove it. I'm saying we can still aim for a better world, but things like animal suffering, for an example, would be something that just innately happens. And we can work out ways to do that more efficiently, of course.
But just innately happens isn't sort of a moral judgment, right? It's a cop-out, essentially. So that's like, walking past someone beating up their child and saying, it just happens, right? No, it's bad, wrong, and it should be stopped.
No, because there's a difference between those things. Again, you're trying to equate humans and animals. Those things, why should I value them the same when you're agreeing with me they're not the same?
But they both suffer, so they're the same in that sense.
Yeah, I only care about human suffering. That's what I said. I only care about humans.
But that's discrimination, right? It's wrong.
Who am I discriminating against? Non-humans?
Animals.
Yeah, and do they have a problem with that?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Can you bring an animal up to explain what his issue is?
No, and you can't do that because animals can't speak.
Why not?
They're too vulnerable.
Interesting. Right.
And
so it's almost as if like they don't have the same like value set as humans do, right?
Well, animals are far more vulnerable, right? They're essentially like human babies in a sense.
Oh, really? How do you know that? When you look at an animal and you see it squealing, how do you know it's not having the best time of its life?
Okay, well, we don't really want to platform a sadist, do we, guys? That's just... He probably tortures animals for fun. Okay, let's have a look at the queue. Hello.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, just making sure. Yeah, I think that making everybody go extinct does stop suffering, but it also stops enjoyment too. So people are enjoying their lives.
Right, but
Yeah.
the thing is about having fun, it's not like, important, right? But, not being tortured, that is important, right?
Wait,
So-
what makes something important?
Huh?
What makes something important?
The urgency, I guess.
The need? Well, I think a lot of people have the need to enjoy stuff. I think I have it.
Yeah, but, you're not going to suffer without that, right? Whereas those that are being tortured are going to suffer terribly.
Yeah, but I still feel that I suffer because it's a net loss versus a net gain. So I'm still suffering. And I think added up, I still think I enjoy life, even though there's a possibility I could get tortured for the rest of my life. There's also a possibility I can enjoy the rest of my life.
But do you think, others should be tortured for your sake?
Well, I also think I should, because of other people's suffering, I shouldn't be unalived for their sake. Why should I
So you
stop
do
living for
So
the
you
sake
do
of other
think that they
people?
should be tortured for your benefit, right?
No, they're not being tortured for my benefit. Just in the
But
same way,
that's what
I'm
you're
not.
saying, right? Is that they should be tortured and we shouldn't put
Just
an end to it because you want to have fun.
no, I'm not. I never said that. What I
But
said was that
that's effectively what you're saying, though, right?
no, you misrepresented me.
How?
Because they're not getting tortured because of me. They're not getting
But
tortured
you are
because of
saying
me.
that your
I'm
fun
not
is
the one
so
torturing them.
important that we shouldn't stop their suffering, right?
Well, their suffering doesn't, I mean, in the conversation, it necessarily doesn't exist yet. It's just a possibility of their suffering. It's also a possibility I suffer
Suffering's
too.
not a hypothetical thing, right? It's happening right now. It's going to keep happening.
Yeah,
So,
well,
it's not a
in a billion
hypothetical.
years is not, or 100 years is not necessarily
Well, let's
what's
not,
happening.
drift off into fantasy. Let's stay
Yeah,
grounded in reality here, okay?
yeah,
Suffering is real, okay?
yeah.
People are suffering right now. Animals are suffering. And it's going to keep happening for millions of more years. So
But
we
people
should
also
stop
want to
that.
enjoy the life too for millions of more years.
Yeah, which is selfish and wrong, right?
It's wrong for them to enjoy their lives.
If it's at the expense of babies being
Is
tortured, yeah.
is not at the expense of babies being tortured, because just because they enjoy their lives doesn't mean necessarily babies are
Okay,
suffering.
but the solution, the only way to prevent babies being tortured is by not allowing people to selfishly have fun, right? So yeah, it
Well, I
is
don't think
a
it's selfish,
direct relation.
because I don't think it's selfish. Selfish would imply that
You're
it's
saying your fun and
directly.
pleasure is more important
It
than
would have
babies
to
getting
directly
tortured. That's the
harm.
definition of being selfish.
No, but it has to. Being selfish is wanting gain for yourself at the direct expense of somebody else. This is completely indirect. It's not even direct.
That's the system we live in, and that needs to be put an end to.
Well, how about you first stop living? Wouldn't that be a beginning?
All right, I would say they got owned. If someone has to tell me to kill myself, yeah, you lost, buddy. Okay. Okay, let's have a look. Let's check the queue. Let's have a gander. Right, so I mean, this kind of proves my point that I've been saying on every stream. You know, these people haven't thought anything through about what they're saying, okay? Now, why is that? That's an interesting question, right? You can prove that they haven't thought it through, because when you push them on it, they just say, kill yourself. They can't defend their positions. And the reason for that is because they were born with innate positions from nature that are, by definition, irrational and indefensible. So you just knock them out and you get told to kill yourself.
Yo.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I have a few questions. Like, firstly, yeah, I think we can all agree, right, that people have different perspectives on life, right? And you said, you want to do this extinctionism thing, and it's kind of objective, right? But the thing is, people have different perspectives, so how would you get people to, accept or embrace your view on the universe?
Yeah, so I mean, most people don't accept it, right? But you know, I didn't start this movement. I'm not the only person in this movement. It's a big movement, well, relatively big considering how controversial it is, and it's growing every day. And the vast majority of people, like myself, that have joined this movement, did so on the basis and proposition of, you know, we're going to work towards zero suffering. No one should have to suffer. And this is the only way to prevent more victims and suffering, right? Otherwise, it will continue for unlimited, you know, forever, basically. So yeah, you know, it's for people that prioritize the victims, that understand that, you know, those monkeys that are running around having fun at their expense are selfish, and you know, there's no value in fun and pleasure and running around when it's, you know, next to babies being abused and tortured to death and eaten alive and terrible things like that. So no one should have to suffer, especially not for some privileged people that don't even care about their suffering. And yeah, it's about being on the side of the victims. It's about being on the side of safety. It's about being against forced existence and extreme suffering. It's the ultimate responsible and ethical position.
But for this movement to take place and actually happen, I'm saying, you need a lot of people to do it, right? Or a certain amount of people to get it to work, right? And I'm saying, I don't know if that would be possible because of what people value, and yeah, I just don't see how. Yeah.
Well, we have to try, right? For the sake of the victims. The victims are depending on us.
Yeah, that's true. But do you think it's possible then for enough people to get this work to happen?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, we're going to try and get enough people, and secondly, people that are on board with it are highly motivated, because we're responsible for, you know, countless victims essentially of extreme torture. So we are the ones that have accepted the responsibility for them.
All right.
So we are highly motivated to that end.
I have another question, right? So, you know how with enough time, organisms start to arise again from nature, right? The universe. So you're saying to prevent suffering, we have to you know what I'm trying to say. Euthanasia thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the sort of main way to prevent reproduction, right? So if you don't do that, there's going to be, you know, more generations after generations. But that's actually the majority of what we want to do, is prevent life from developing to begin with, right? So, you know, the vast majority of the victims we want to help are in the future, essentially, and we want to prevent their torture and suffering.
But the organisms that come back, like I know you said you want to prevent it in the first place, but like with enough time, we don't have all the knowledge in the world of the universe, right? But we can assume that time is infinite. It could be infinite in the universe, right? So with enough time, even if you try all of these methods, eventually things will come back, and those things which come back, technically, if other organisms were living and you didn't eradicate those past organisms, the new organisms wouldn't suffer. So then it kind of gets to like you're not helping the future ones as well.
What do you mean? Like the new organisms wouldn't suffer?
Like, so the organisms, let's say 1,000,000 years in the future, right? You eradicate those, right? In the universe. And eventually with enough time, new living organisms come back to life or arise, right? Different from the past ones. And those ones that arise in the future, different from the past ones, will suffer. And it could be because of this movement. And like, surely that.
Why would they suffer more?
No, I'm not saying they'll suffer more, but they will suffer like inevitably because that's part of life. And if those organisms you didn't eradicate in the past were still around, then the new organisms wouldn't be alive because of evolution and stuff, maybe. So then, kind of, doesn't that defeat the purpose of?
Well, no. I mean, firstly, I don't really understand your question, and secondly, it's just about doing the best we can, right? So it's impossible to cause more suffering with extinction than you prevent. So it's already by default a good thing.
But the organisms that come around again.
But we're going to try and prevent that.
Yeah, but with enough time.
Like, well, no, not with enough time. You know, that's just another part of the equation, basically. You know, that's just another thing that we have to try and stop.
And if you don't stop it, then in your eyes, like.
But if we don't even try, then it's going to be far worse, right? So yeah, obviously we have to try.
Okay, but it'd be worse. It'd be worse for.
Why?
The organisms you're.
How?
You're coming back alive into the universe.
Worse in what way?
Because the organisms that come in the future, right, have came from past organisms dying, right? So I'm saying, I know you're trying to prevent those future organisms coming alive in the first place, but if they do, then in your eyes, would this movement like be a waste or not?
I mean, no. You have to try and prevent that from happening, right?
Yeah, and also another thing is that people value different stuff, right? So surely it's practically impossible to do it because people have different values and unique like upbringings and cultures.
Yeah, people are very sort of accepting of extreme suffering as long as it's not themselves. That is, one of our greatest challenges. And yeah, we're working towards solving that problem.
Do you have any idea how you solve that problem or not yet really?
Yeah, we do. So genetics plays a big role. So we're looking at how to change the genetics of the planet. Growing the movement, that's one of the biggest ways to do it. So by getting more people into the movement, getting more resources, more people that are motivated to work on these challenges and problems, we'll be able to find more solutions.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's it. That was all my questions really. The thing is with this, right? You can't really counter it because it's like it's an equation that doesn't self-contradict itself, right? And it's just like because you believe it's not subjective, like.
But even if it is subjective, right? We would say that it's still the right thing. Okay, I mean, you don't need to go into objectivity and subjectivity to say that babies shouldn't get abused and tortured to death, right?
No, because subjective means there's no right or wrong, right? So in your view, it's subjective because some people believe or disagree with what you're saying, as we've seen.
The thing is about this objective thing that people keep mentioning, right, is that essentially it's an appeal to omniscient tier certainty, okay? But we don't need that to say that, you know, babies being abused is bad and we should stop it from happening.
Yeah, so okay. So you think no life is better than a life, basically, with suffering?
Zero tolerance policy on suffering and victims, right? That's just an obviously good thing.
Obviously, good thing.
Yeah.
So even if someone's religious and like a Christian, something like that, you still think you'd be able to like hold up your argument quite well.
Yeah, I haven't really debated too many people that have gone into religion, but yeah, I could give it a go.
Because the thing is with religion, right? It's like if you're religious, religion is theological, obviously, and because of that, like I don't really see how you convince people to go along with this extinctionism thing, because I haven't really seen anyone who spoke to you religious, like super religious.
The thing is, it could take 1,000,000 years to overthrow society, right? It could take 1,000 years. You know, who knows? But it's going to be a long project, and you know, there's definitely lots of solutions that we can investigate and try to work towards.
Okay, and one more thing, right? So, but if your belief in this is, you're saying this is definitely true, right? But someone else says something else is definitely true, then you think it's still. I'm not talking about suffering. I'm talking about you having the power of what happens in the world is better.
But that's always been the case, right? That's just that's just reality. That's always been reality, right? You know, if a political party wants to get in and do something, you know, they're going to do it, right? They're going to get support from people, and you know, they do it without objective certainty or whatever, right? So that's objective certainty has never really been practical or used in history. So it's kind of an impossible standard. It's impractical, right? But people that understand that suffering is bad, it's wrong, and it should be stopped at all costs, and that it's wrong for babies to get abused so that some other people can have fun and eat pizza. They're going to fight for the victims, right? They're going to be on the side of the victims. That's what extinctionism is about. Help on the side of the victims.
So you think like the purpose of human beings is like to do this then specifically?
I would say there's no greater purpose than trying to end all suffering. And, you know, this is the only practical way to do it.
And what do you define like purpose as though? Like, if,
I mean,
like generally, in general.
I wouldn't really, you know, go into that. You know, I don't spend time thinking about purpose. It's more about moral obligation. So the victims are depending on us, right? So we have to do it for them.
But your moral obligation could go against other people's purposes in life and what they think.
That's just the way the world works. You can't point to a single thing in the entire world or history of the world where that's not been the case.
Yeah, true. But I think I don't know, man. Weird. I think
it's as simple as this. We're on the side of the victims and making sure there's no more victims ever again.
Right. I think you should debate a religious person, because I'm not like super religious and it'd be interesting. But yeah, no.
As long as they're not like just completely insane and just gonna goof around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on again.
Yeah.
Ask your questions.
All right. So see you. Have a good day.
You too. Oh, that was a much nicer conversation than the last one. All right. Okay. Howdy.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. How are you, brother?
I'm doing okay. Just out walking around.
Cool.
Yeah. So you think the solution is extinction for all to end suffering?
There's no other way to prevent more, you know, innocent life forms from being forced to exist and to suffer.
And your percentage. What is the percentage of babies that are getting, abused and suffering?
Yeah, it's well over 99.9%,
Of the population?
including animals. Yeah.
But there's 7 billion people on the planet that are alive.
Yeah, which is a drop in the ocean compared to the total population.
So you're including animals.
Why wouldn't I?
Not saying that. I mean, suffering can be good.
It's only by luck that we weren't born as animals, right? So yeah, they deserve help just as much.
Yeah, but we're not all equal or the same.
No,
Especially
but
humans.
we all equally deserve help, though, right? And to not suffer.
But suffering is essential.
To who? Not to a
To
baby
our
getting eaten alive. Is suffering essential to a baby that gets eaten alive and dies?
Well, what is the chances of a baby getting eaten alive?
It's actually is the case for the vast majority of life born on this planet. So extremely high.
And the example that you're using is the most extreme suffering.
It's the most common, actually.
It's not the most common.
It is. Animals are just food on legs, right? And mostly they get eaten because it's easier to do so when they're
If you're
babies.
using animals, I could see why that would be, because they would be the easiest target, obviously. But as human beings,
they deserve moral consideration just as much as humans do.
That's kind of our purpose, because we're the intelligence here. They're not consciously aware of their actions. They're just surviving.
Yeah, they're vulnerable in that sense, right? Extremely vulnerable. They can't help themselves or fend for themselves.
Yes, but you can't blame them for their decisions, because they're not making conscious decisions. They're just surviving. They're just reacting to their environment.
Just chaos and suffering. Exactly.
Yeah, so the way to end that is for us to step in and
cause extinction.
No, not cause extinction, because that would mean we too, right? Because you're involving everyone.
Well, animals come first because they can't help themselves, right? But yeah, no one should have to suffer. There should be a zero tolerance policy on suffering. The only way to achieve 0% risk of extreme suffering, like a baby being eaten alive, is with stopping, turning off the tap, right? And it's not about like killing or anything, because every life form is forced to exist, so that's already a bad thing. So it's simply trying to stop that very simple and terrible thing from happening, and the awful results that also happen from that.
Well, suffering is a part of growth, so you would have to go through this suffering to learn to get better and prevent suffering.
But,
so it's
a baby
part of
that gets eaten alive doesn't grow from that suffering.
Yeah, but when you say a baby, you're not talking about humans exclusively. You're talking about an environment that is obviously has no rules, no laws, no morals, no conscious thought.
No safety.
That's like me walking around and there's a baby ant and I step on it. That's like what you're counting in this. It makes zero sense.
It's only by luck that you weren't born as that ant, though, right?
But what you're not making any sense.
Why not?
Because it's almost accidental what you're saying.
Can you explain what you mean?
Because animals aren't conscious.
How do you know?
So you think that they consider another animal's feelings before they eat it? Or do you think that's instinct and they're just looking at it as a meal?
Yeah, just instinct.
Or do you think they consider their feelings? Oh, he has a mom, he has a dad. Maybe I shouldn't eat this zebra. Maybe he has brothers and sisters.
Nature purposefully prevented them from having those feelings because that would get in the way of survival, right? So
so they're not even considering that.
Yeah, exactly. They can't. They're not capable of doing so, right? It's a terrible situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have to stop it. That's what extinction is about, right?
No, it wouldn't be an extension because you still have to have a life and you have to experience. It's more so
Why?
making a
Why do you have to
better
have a life and experience?
environment where that stuff doesn't happen. Where a lion isn't hunting zebras, where alligators aren't just attacking whatever they see because that's all they know. You would have to create environments that they have suffice stuff that they can eat to where they're not eating each other.
But that's not
That's a problem solved right there.
not realistic. I mean,
How do animals survive in the zoo?
well, they're forced to be there. But look,
But
I mean,
how do they survive? They're not eating each other, are they? They're still living though. There's babies in there that they've never been attacked or eaten, right?
well, that's wrong. No, that's completely wrong.
How is that wrong?
Lots of animals in the zoo get attacked and eaten.
By who?
The other animals in their enclosure.
Bro, when does that happen? What are the chances? What are the
Google it
percentages?
right now. Google punch the monkey, right?
Bro, that's just like a trainer going in there and getting eaten, bro.
No,
How often does that happen?
No. Animals abuse each other all the time in zoo enclosures.
I have to disagree, bro.
Well, then you're disagreeing with reality.
And you're only using babies. Why are you only using babies? It's like you're using the most extreme thing to get your point across.
They're sort of the
And didn't you say 99%? How many of those are humans? What percentage of that is humans? Because are you counting a whole bunch of goldfish babies getting eaten by sharks and whales?
All life deserves to
Bro,
be.
you're counting 1 million goldfish getting ate by one whale.
That's correct.
Bro, that is illogical. Come on now, get real, bro.
Why? Why shouldn't they have moral consideration?
Bro, you're counting 1 million babies getting eaten by one whale at one time.
Yes.
Come on, man.
What's wrong with that? Why do they not deserve to have that experience prevented? Okay, another clown. Cool. If you can't answer my questions, can't defend your positions, then you have lost. All right. Okay, let's have a look. Right, so while we wait for the next thing to happen, every animal deserves help to be prevented from being forced to exist and suffer. Would you want to be one of those goldfish that he was talking about? And you're starving, you're running for your life, and then you get eaten alive. Would you want to avoid that experience? Yes, probably, right? And you can say, what if I'm one of the lucky ones? Okay, but we have to think about the unlucky ones too, right? Otherwise, you're just ignoring them, which is wrong. Hello.
What up, James?
Hi, how's it going?
I'm good.
Nice, Avatar.
What do you think all life should be made extinct to stop unfair suffering?
Yeah.
Why don't you die?
Because then I wouldn't be able to, work towards achieving this goal.
You want to kill everyone?
No, it's extinction's not about killing. It's more about prevention.
Oh, it's about you want to prevent. You just want to make everyone not have babies.
We haven't settled on an exact method yet, right? We have to research.
Who'd we?
Well, I didn't start this movement.
ProExtinction.com, is that your group, your fundraiser?
Well, we're not fundraising, but we're looking to grow the movement. So yeah, it's a real movement. Lots of people working.
How do I participate? Do I just tell people to not reproduce?
No. So antinatalism is bad for extinction, right? It's opting out of the system instead of fighting it. It does nothing to help animals, for example. So humanity is the vehicle for helping all other life first, and then
we kill everything?
help prevent all suffering for all life.
Oh, okay. So we starve them to death.
No.
What do you think of just like going around, like what's that chemical agent they use in Vietnam?
Yeah. Let's maybe not have them on the stream. Okay. Q is looking pretty empty at the minute. But extinctionism is about responsibility, doing things in the ethical way, doing things in the best way possible. It all stems from, the absolute moral urgency and need for no more forced existence and no more extreme suffering. It's as simple as saying, would you like there to be no more suffering at any cost? Yeah, absolutely. Extinctionists understand that, the fun that the top 1% are having will never justify any suffering. And even if it was the other way around and there was only one victim suffering, being tortured for the benefit of others, it would still be wrong and evil. We will never be able to sit and have fun knowing that babies are being tortured, okay? Most people are happy to just ignore it, laugh about it, say it's balance, right? But that's incredibly selfish and immoral. No babies should have to get tortured for anyone's fun, right? That's just obvious, okay? It's just very obvious. So we should have a zero tolerance policy on suffering, on forced existence, which is non-consensual, and terrible experiences, torture, right? It's just obvious, guys. So let's respond to some comments in the chat while we wait around. I'm pro eat the rich. That's not going to help anyone. You guys need to consider animals, right? They are the real victims here. You're giving them the least consideration if you ignore animals. They actually need the consideration more urgently than anyone else. Humans have the best conditions and the least suffering. Animals have the worst conditions and the worst suffering. They can't even ask for help. They can't even speak. And they are just food on legs that gets tortured and a cruel death. That's not really happening to most humans, but it is happening to most animals, right? It's a horrible experience. Maybe the absolute top 0.001% are somehow okay, but even then, they're probably suffering as well, right? There is no fantasy 50% that's having a great time, or even 51%. It's just nonsense. While we're still waiting for the queue, we can address this whole opt-out thing that people keep saying. If they don't like it, they can just opt out. Now, I've actually heard people trying to tell me that, unaliving yourself is an easy thing to do, but that's a completely insane thing to suggest. People that end up doing that, and obviously animals can't do it, so, they don't even get that choice. But people that do have to do it, it's not some easy, happy thing for them, okay? It's like extremely terrifying. Hello.
Hi. I'm Autumn. I'm from the US. I just had some questions about this.
Sure.
So, I was just wondering, I don't know, I kind of wanted to bring what your belief system was into this, but I have a few questions first of all.
Yeah.
I was wondering, so if your plan is to have a mass extinction, what is your plan for afterwards? And what I mean by this is, once the mass extinction happens, however that occurs, is your plan to just start civilization over again? How it started, and that's why it gets into your belief system, however you believe it started to begin with. Or what is your plan for afterwards? Are you planning for pro-extinctionists to somehow survive this event and come back and tell everybody? Or what would the plan be?
Well, no, I mean, the plan isn't to get an asteroid to hit the planet or anything like that.
Well, no, I mean, it
It's
could be done many a ways. It could be a weather phenomenon. It could be World War III. Everybody, literally multiple nukes coming. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but you know what I mean? Like, I understand it could be a multitude of ways. I'm saying what, because when everybody sees mass extinction, I think that is why everybody's coming to constantly come at you. But I think there's a few like this is a lingering question I feel for almost every watcher. Like, what does this exactly mean for you guys?
so, we need the most vast and thorough extinction possible. Extinctionism is mostly about preventing life from coming back or from forming to begin with. So that is kind of the main thing, right? It's about prevention. And we need humanity to stay strong and healthy to support that mission. So, we want a suffering-free planet, no animals, no suffering for animals on Earth, and to do the same for the universe, basically. So as much of the universe as possible, and we'll just keep going until it becomes impossible, basically.
Right. So I understand what you're saying. So I guess this kind of gets into my next question about sort of kind of your belief system, because you are the one on here doing these lives and predominantly speaking, but maybe like also just like the belief system of the organization or whatever, in regards to like, okay, a few things. So religion and almost the aspect of what do you think, what, because, and I think this, a lot of people are wanting this, and because this could be how you guide your answers. What do you think happens to people when they die? Not necessarily what do you believe in, who do you praise, who do you worship, but what do you think happens when you die? And then also with that, this may seem a little kooky, but I'm saying like, what is your belief almost in aliens? Because when you say the universe, I'm interested. While I get where you're coming from with the point of view and the want and the need to stop suffering, and I get that 100%, I'm saying I personally don't believe we're the only ones out there in the whole entire universe. Now, do I believe necessarily what the United States government is telling me about aliens? No, not necessarily, but I also don't think I'm the only one out there. I'm not even talking about a creator. I'm talking about other sentient beings. And also because I believe they would be technically far more farther advanced than we are and might not necessarily have feelings. And so stuff that they do that they might not be able to feel would be evil to us and would hurt us as humans and animals and all and as the world, as the earth. So I'm kind of just saying, like, do you believe in extraterrestrial life, and what would the plan be, and how would that work with them?
Yeah, we do believe that, scientifically speaking, it's actually very likely that the universe will be teeming with life. The vast majority will probably be unintelligent, animals, plant life as well. So now there may be some lucky ones out there that somehow don't suffer, but realistically, it seems more likely that sentience requires negative motivators like pain, for example, to know that you've stepped on something that's you're now bleeding, for example, right?
Well, I guess I do agree with that. That makes sense. I'm saying my next question would be, what if that's the only motivator for them? And so what I'm saying is, like, they could, let's say they were to come in contact with us, like, and say they were to come down to this earth or something, I'm saying, like, if they were to come into contact with somebody not like themselves, I don't get how they would understand and want to form and agree with a organization like yours based off the fact that pain could be their only motivator. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense? Because with humans and with animals, pain isn't our only motivator. Animals do have empathy. I believe that we have empathy. We feel when somebody else is sad. Animals can feel when somebody else is sad too. Now, I believe that certain animals don't have aspects in their brain to tell when another animal could be fearful, and that's why they eat them. But that's beyond the point. I'm saying if fear is somebody's or a sentient being's only motivator, how could we convince them to make everything go extinct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you could really have a life form where it only has negative motivators, because it wouldn't have any sort of balance in its life, right? Yeah, we'd say that
I agree with the balance. I do agree with the balance. Now for extraterrestrials, I don't know because they're not here. I wouldn't know. I agree with your balance aspect though, and I agree with that in humans. I believe that if there wasn't suffering, now, bruh, certain suffering should not occur, and I do believe it's a lot of the rich and the powerful and the elite and people of secret circles, not even necessarily rich people, but people of secret circles, people that could be my neighbors, could be part of these secret circles, and they take pleasure in the fact of suffering of others, suffering of children, suffering of babies, suffering animals, no matter what it is, just suffering. And so two things here. I mean, I believe truly that without personal suffering in some aspect, if the human population were to ever come back, that wouldn't necessarily be possible without human suffering, or not even human suffering, just suffering in general coming again. So that's one point. And then the other point is like, I just I don't necessarily understand, where, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but do you get what I'm trying to say is, give me one moment. Do you, go ahead. Like, do you have anything to go back on with what I've said so far? I'm sorry. I know I go off in tangents. I think more like theoretically. And so like that's theoretically is like where I'm having a hard point getting through on this like idea, your ideas, is theoretically, if this were to be a plan, there are so many avenues that I feel like you don't really cover other than just suffering. And what I'm saying is, I don't think the human life or animal life would be possible. Nobody would find happiness or joy in anything if there wasn't suffering to compare it to. And so I'm kind of saying, you said that for extraterrestrials. I don't know why it would be any different.
We kind of see it the other way around, right? You know, people keep saying, oh, you wouldn't have all of this happiness and joy. But actually, you wouldn't have all of this suffering and misery, right? So
are you okay with just having a baseline and just, because I don't know, theoretically there would be many philosophers and people to disagree with you in the fact that a life of, and women in general, women specifically, of like not necessarily this century but of past centuries, I don't know about other countries, I know in America, of women who got to sit at the house all day and pretty much do whatever, like not have to go to work, not have to do these things, and it could become boring. Like there's many writings on just living with nothing happy but nothing horrible either. So I'm asking you, is that what you truly believe in, is just having a baseline, being at a baseline, and that's what everybody should be at? Because I'm asking you how do you define happiness if you don't have something else to compare it to, is what I'm essentially asking you.
I mean, we don't really mess with any of that stuff. We just work towards safety from forced existence and you know, the suffering that comes as a result. And extinction is that. I understand that,
but I'm saying if your goal is to essentially end suffering, and my argument is a lot of people don't know happiness without suffering, people or things, animals in general. I'm sorry, I should change my language. Animals in general, I do not believe know joy, true joy, happiness. I'm not joy and happiness without something to compare it to. So do you agree or disagree with that essentially?
In the safety of non-existence, you don't need anything to compare it to still have that safety, right? So, most of the victims we want to help are in the future. They don't exist. They haven't come to exist yet. They don't need any sort of balance or contrast. They just need to have us prevent them from being forced to exist, but so that they can avoid a life of torture.
Okay. I guess this is really just getting to what my question really is what you believe in, I guess. So, I guess, yeah, what do you or what does your organization believe in, I guess? Like, spiritually, religious, like, what do you think happens after you die?
It's just non-existence, so there's no suffering, nothing bad, just safety from suffering. And we believe that positive experiences are absolutely worthless when it's at the expense of extreme suffering.
I do agree with that. Yeah, I agree with
Well,
that.
like,
I just don't think that.
I wouldn't, abuse a baby if I get a pizza out of it, right? So it's morality essentially in that sense, just basic morality, right? We shouldn't allow others to suffer terribly for our benefit, right?
So I guess I do have another question. So you said that you believe there's no happiness and no evil once you're dead. So I guess my next question is, so you guys, that's not something you really brand yourselves on as an organization, correct?
We're atheistic.
You're atheistic. Okay. All right. So do you have to be atheistic to join?
To join our particular group, yes. Now there are some less serious groups out there, but they're nowhere near as serious as us.
Okay, that just makes so much more sense. Okay, I think I'm done here. I might come on another day. You guys are interesting. I'm going to collect my thoughts more, but in order to collect my thoughts, I just had to ask you these questions.
Proextinction.com, we've got a frequently asked questions page, a manifesto, loads of good information on there.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, thanks for coming on.
Yep, have a great day. Bye.
All right, wicked. On to the next challenge. Ooh, is it going to work? Let's have a look. To kind of, while we wait for more people, sort of elaborate on what do we believe in or what are our principles. Suffering is urgent. People that are suffering need help and consideration more than those that are having fun, right? And that's just simple and obvious, right? If someone is asking for an ice cream, but someone else is saying, I've been stabbed in the leg, please can you take me to hospital? You're probably going to help the person suffering, right? So suffering takes priority over pleasure and fun. And, life is essentially just a privilege, and there's no more real meaning to it, or there's nothing really to it other than just trying to survive, maybe having a bit of fun while you do it. But you don't need it. Like, if you don't have that, then, and David Benatar goes into this with his asymmetry argument. If you don't have loads of fun and you're not existing, then nothing bad is happening to you, okay? You're not suffering. You're just safe from suffering. You're not crying about it in non-existence, okay? Whereas those that are being tortured, right, they need the torture to stop. Okay, so if we don't do that, then it is bad, essentially. It's terrible. I don't really agree with David Benatar in terms of antinatalism or, but he made some decent points, right? That essentially in non-existence, nothing's bad is happening. Those that haven't been born yet. They don't need to be born, right? They're not going to suffer if they're not born. Whereas those that are, imprisoned in a life of torture, they desperately need help and to be saved, essentially. And those that are going to be born into extreme torture and a cruel life, they need help, essentially. And this becomes increasingly obvious the more you extend the consideration to those that are at the bottom of this totem pole. You'll see this time and time again with people that come on to my stream. They'll say, well, what about a billionaire swimming in his heated pool? What about his pleasure? And he might stub his toe, but that's just balance. Well, okay, you're looking at it the wrong way round. You're looking up at all this great stuff, but you're refusing to look down at the victims that are suffering. Okay, so they are, the ones that are at the bottom of that are suffering so terribly that people don't even like to think about it. They don't want to think about it. And that means that those victims just get ignored. So that's the worst thing possible, is to just keep ignoring the worst off victims who have been forced to exist. And, again, you just simply have to think of the ones that are worst off. But people don't. They'll say, oh, but, what about, balance in life, and you can kind of learn from your suffering. That doesn't apply to a baby that's been tortured to death, okay? Especially animals, they can't philosophize about their suffering, they can't cope with it. Being eaten alive is a truly terrible experience that most people, again, don't like to think about. And so they're not being responsible towards it because they're not thinking about it properly. And this is, the thing is, like, we kind of live in a bubble of optimism and, positivity bias, essentially. If people woke up, right, they would realize that we are effectively in hell and that we are at the top of the mountain and that the vast majority of life is burning and being tortured. Yet people, again, because of nature made us this way. Most people just kind of are forced by nature to think that there's some sort of balance. But that balance itself is a myth, right? What kind of magical seesaw are you balancing on? Hello, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, man? Interesting topic. Wanted to talk to you about it.
Great, let's dive on in.
Yeah. So I mean, right out the gate, I'll agree with you that life, I guess, is not fair, or that somebody, you kind of, if you just do a survey of all people, no matter how fortunate everyone is in life, they always find something to complain about. There's going to be just a state of unhappiness. But my question for you is that it seems like we can make a really good inductive argument that most people don't choose to end their own lives, right? It appears that life is worth living. So what do you say to that?
Well, so 2 points. Firstly, most life on the planet is babies that get eaten alive, so they don't really have any choice. And secondly, for humans that are depressed and end up unaliving themselves, it's and I actually went into this earlier on the stream. It's a myth that they're happy to do it. For a lot of these people, they have extreme mental illness. They have chronic pain, physical illnesses, and making the decision. So firstly, you have to come to terms with the fact that you want to do it, and even you have to overcome a ginormous survival instinct to do that. You have to overcome a ginormous fear of the act and the uncertainty of what comes next. Even as an atheist, right, it can still be a very scary and terrifying proposition. Then you have to actually go through with doing it. which takes a lot of courage. And, you know, again, when you're fighting with extreme mental illnesses, depression, fear, extreme anxiety, it's not like a walk in the park to opt out, okay? And then how are you going to do it as well? You know, the method you use is probably going to be horrifically painful, terrifying. It's just a completely awful thing, and an absolute struggle. And the extreme pressures of suffering and terrible things that are going on that push you to do it, you know, have to be so extreme to overcome that survival instinct and that fear. So actually, you know, the fight going on inside someone's head. Now, maybe there are some lucky ones that find it easy, but for probably most, I would say, and I'm saying probably, I'm not 100%, but definitely for some, the struggle and the fight that goes on in their head to go through with, you know, deciding to do it to all the way to actually doing it is a tragedy. Basically, it's not some nice experience.
Okay, well, let's start with the method. You're talking about the method, right? So I'm not sure if you're aware that in the country Canada, for example, they have a program where they have doctor-assisted. I wouldn't call it euthanasia because you know the patient makes the decision, but doctors assist them in a very painless manner. It's essentially just a cocktail that has like one immediate effect that puts you to sleep, and then a delayed second substance that terminates you. And if we just kind of like look out at the type of people that do it, I mean, it's not just people with mental illnesses. There are people who, you know, maybe don't have any family or don't have any reasons to continue on living. So it doesn't appear that suffering is exclusively the reason why people decide to leave the world. Doesn't have to be painful. And once again, it's just the inductive case, you know, the law of large numbers. There's like 8 billion people in the world. And it's such a rarity for us to see somebody who wants to, you know, just stop going. It would just appear to me that there's more reasons than not to stay here. I'm not sure exactly where you're getting the idea in the other direction.
So again, you're talking about the lucky ones, essentially, right?
Yeah, but the inductive cases, there's more lucky than unlucky, right?
It doesn't matter, and that's also not true, because you know you just have to include animals for that to immediately be false. So yeah, but extinctionism is about, you know, focusing on the victims who need the help the most, not the lucky ones, right? The lucky ones, you know, they're people that are saying, you know, my fun is more important, and you know, justifies babies getting tortured, right? So it's not, they don't even deserve moral consideration in that sense. Now they're still going to get moral consideration, but they're not exactly moral agents themselves. And it's just a gross and wrong system, essentially, to say that, you know, me eating pizza justifies babies getting tortured to death.
Wait, when you're talking about babies right now, you're talking about animals, presumably, right?
Well, all life that suffers, you know, that's just one example, right?
Oh, I agree that all life suffers. Just out of curiosity, have you ever owned a dog?
No.
So I've owned a couple throughout my life, and the really interesting thing about dogs is that they adapt to things that they previously found maybe uncomfortable really, really quickly. I had a dog that had to have a leg amputated, and it went from, you know, being rather unhappy about the process to just being as happy as she's ever been her entire life within like I would say like 72 hours.
Okay.
So I guess it feels to me like you were projecting a conclusion that you really cannot ground.
Well, I would say that actually you're the one projecting a conclusion of the lucky ones, right, and generalizing it. So you're not mentioning the unlucky ones, right? So you're leaving them out.
No, I agree with you that the unlucky ones exist, but I think that the numbers favor my position more than they favor your position.
But even one is too many, right?
Why?
Because nobody needs to have fun, right? But those that are getting tortured need to have that torture stopped or prevented.
So why? Like, I guess what I'm confused about is that reality is not an agent. Like, reality does not act with intentions. So you are ascribing some type of like normative claim where something ought to be happening as if there's a normative reason for it. And I feel like that's a really silly thing to project onto nature. Nature is the way that it is. And people that act with normative or agential processes, we're the only ones that can decide courses of action. So since you have this higher order intent, like intelligence, why do you think you are in a position to make conclusions about all other life?
Well, animals can't think for themselves, right? They can't really fend for themselves, and lives being forced to exist is just objectively bad. And the extreme suffering and harm that comes as a result is subjectively bad. It's objectively unfair.
Well, hold on. Can we pause
Objectively
right
cruel.
there? When you said objectively, what did you mean there by that word?
Like unquestionable, right?
But you understand that suffering requires an appraisal system. So what might cause you suffering might cause somebody else great pleasure, like a sadist or a masochist, right?
Well, the sadists can go screw themselves.
Yeah, but you understand how no matter how this conversation goes, we wrap back around to you projecting your preferences on the rest of reality. Do you think that's
Well, no, I
rational?
think it's pretty obvious, right, that babies don't want to get eaten alive, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so again, that's not really my opinion. I'm not projecting it. That's just irrefutably true.
I understand, but essentially what you're saying, okay, let me ask you this. Imagine there was a person who is pregnant with someone with Down syndrome. Do you think that person ought to abort?
I don't know. I'm not an expert on that.
No, you actually do know. Your position requires you to answer one way without being contradictory to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be in context, really, right?
What more context do you need? Do you agree that the person would have an unfair disadvantage in experience of life compared to if they did not have that specific disorder?
Yeah.
Okay. So you think that we should abort people that have disabilities?
I mean, probably, yeah.
What if it wasn't discovered until after birth and now we're dealing with an infant? Should we euthanize it?
Probably, yeah.
All right, man. This was a great talk. I hope you get some help.
Thank you. We are looking for help, actually. The movement is looking to grow. We are constantly recruiting people to the cause of preventing victims and preventing suffering, right? Those that understand that suffering is terrible and no one should have to suffer so that some selfish people can watch Netflix and brain rot, they will join the extinction movement and fight for the victims, okay? Everyone else is going to fight for themselves and for the lucky ones. Are they fighting for the victims? No. So they're on the side of evil, basically, right? Extinctionists are on the side of good, because we're actually saying, no, babies shouldn't be forced to exist and be tortured to death. Everyone else is saying, yes, they should. Like, it's so obvious, guys. Extinction is safety from suffering. It's the end of victimization. It's undoing the mistake that nature made, right? Nature doesn't decide or make decisions. It's just a chaotic process that has caused extremely terrible, tragic things. Okay. And hello, how's it going? Oh. Well, the queue will need to replenish itself. So, in the meantime, let's sort of dive on in, right? Again, the queue needs to replenish itself, but yeah, extinctionists are on the side of the victims, guys. It's, do you want to be on the side of the fortunate or the side of the unfortunate? It's as simple as that. Hello, how you
Yo,
doing?
pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, thank you.
Absolutely. I think that oh, wait, all life or like just humans?
All life.
Oh, I don't think about well, I mean, I can't argue. I can't say no. Like if I like ending all life would definitely end suffering for good. Like I don't know, but I think that life and suffering are like go hand in hand maybe.
But that's the same thing a sadist would say while torturing a baby animal, right? He would say, shh, 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 shh. Your suffering is part of the balance of my pleasure. Shh.
So it's suffering objective then or
Um, I don't know. Suffering's pretty similar across the board, but there's differences. Different animals experience things differently, but every life suffers, right? And doesn't deserve to suffer.
That's true. That's true. I mean, what if I consider suffering like having $1 million and and someone considers suffering killing, like who's right and who's wrong here, I guess. Like
Yeah, I mean, you can't really have a sensical or consistent system where some are being tortured so that others can have fun. You can't really make sense of it. The only thing that does make sense is a zero tolerance policy on suffering.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it a lot and like suffering like it's either not all good or it's not said the right way. I don't know.
Yeah, again, for extinctionists, it's just as simple as, no one should have to suffer. So we should make sure that's the case, basically.
Fair enough. I'm gonna go ahead and step down because I don't know too much, but I mean can't really argue with that. But
Well, consider joining the movement. We're always looking for activists to help us achieve this, right? The victims are depending on us. It's a serious project. It's a real project. It might take hundreds of years. We might not see the results in our lifetime, but we can make it possible for the future of the movement. If we can't achieve it in our lifetimes, then the next generation might.
do you have a website or anything where I can like get information or?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just above my head. It's proextinction.com.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and check that out, and you have a good rest of your day. Of
You too. Thanks for coming on.
course.
Eric,
Hello.
how you doing?
So you're pro extinction. That just means like want to like you want to have everybody extinct, everything like gone.
So we're suffering abolitionists, basically. We want to abolish suffering. Slavery was abolished in America to a large extent, but we want to abolish all suffering. Slavery is just one type of suffering, right? People want to abolish animal agriculture, raising chickens and eating them. But we want to abolish all types of suffering, not just one.
Yeah, that doesn't really answer my question. Do you want everything to be extinct? I'm confused.
Yeah, it's more about prevention. Some euthanasia might be required in the process, but it's more about the billions of years of future victims that we can prevent and should prevent from being forced.
So how would you go about doing that?
So step one is to grow the movement, essentially, to get people on board. Now, so imagine that you were the only person in the world that wanted cancer to be cured, right? And you can see that there's loads of scientists curing other diseases, but not cancer. If you really cared about it, then you would start a movement. Even if you weren't a scientist yourself, you would say, let's procancercure.com or whatever, right? And you would say, we need to pool resources. We need people in the street demanding it. The same way that people going out and doing walks and marathons and stuff to raise money for charities, right? And to grow the movement for that charity and, resources for it, right? Any movement has to start with activists that are spreading the message, spreading awareness, and growing the movement, right?
I'm confused. Is dying like not one of the issues of suffering? Like,
Oh yeah,
is dying not like one of the problems?
yeah. But the thing is that life is doing that, right? And so that's something we need to prevent.
So dying is something we need to prevent. So the answer is just kill everything.
Well, again, we're not really for killing. The responsible thing is euthanasia, right? Which means it has to be done in an ethical way, ideally.
You don't think that's killing?
You wouldn't say a vet is killing animals, right? By preventing their suffering. You'd say you would
What
correct.
is your genuine definition? What is the definition of killing?
I don't know. Google it.
Isn't it putting the end of someone's life or something's life?
Probably something like that. Yeah. What's your point, though?
All right, I think I'm done. I think I'm done here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming on. Okay. We have a returning guest.
Hello again.
Mojo.
Hello. I have a point I want to raise because I forgot to say it last time.
Go for it.
So you think that like suffering, you refer to that as like physical pain?
It's physical and mental.
And you think that an animal getting eaten alive, like as a baby, is them suffering, right?
Yeah.
And you think humans, if it was a human baby, it's the same thing, right?
I mean, it depends, right? A human baby could get eaten alive. It depends on the situation, right? Someone might do it quickly. They might do it over a longer period of time. Some animals get eaten over the course of hours. Some of them, it's a lot quicker. So, you have to look at the specific context.
Surely you can solve all of this just through education, because I don't think an animal getting eaten is like suffering, because that's just not suffering. And humans,
why not?
That's not evil, because suffering, right?
Evil.
An animal getting eaten, that's part of nature, right? But nature itself.
But they do suffer.
Well, no, but that's not suffering, because that's just a part. It's an indifferent. It's not bad or good, right? It's just what happens in nature.
Why does it being nature mean that they're not suffering?
Because nature is good as a whole, right? It does.
That doesn't negate the fact that they suffer.
Yes, but suffering. But we don't have to refer to suffering as bad then in itself, then.
But it's bad for the ones that are suffering, isn't it?
Yeah, but as the whole, it's indifferent, so it's not really it's not really suffering. And human suffering.
What whole are you talking about?
Nature.
But nature isn't. Nature's just a word.
Nature is a thing you can see. Like trees are part of nature, right?
No, nature is just something like a descriptive term, basically.
So a tree isn't part of. What would you call a tree a part of then?
I don't know. The universe.
Yeah. Okay. And things in the universe are what we refer to as nature.
But the thing is, words and concepts don't take priority over living beings, right? A concept doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have desires. It can't.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying, and if you go into humans, right? Surely, suffering as a human, right? I think you can go through hardship and it doesn't count as suffering. Or even if it does, it's not evil in itself.
Yeah.
So surely you can solve that through education. Like humans attacking other humans, right? If you're saying you have the technology in the future to eradicate all life in the universe.
The most educated people on the planet ended up being like Jeffrey Epstein's and Donald Trump's and stuff.
Well, no, because they didn't. Donald Trump clearly doesn't have the right education.
Okay, but how can you educate animals not to eat each other? You can't.
You don't. You let them happen because they don't suffer. Animals don't suffer. Suffering
Animals
is
don't suffer, right? If you see someone abusing an animal, they're obviously causing it suffering.
yeah, the human, and then you can solve that by educating the human not to do that.
That's just false, though, right? You can't educate a sadist not to be a sadist.
Well, you can educate them. You can if you have technology to eradicate the universe in the future, surely it can go the same thing, right?
But you can't educate animals not to eat each other, right?
Yeah, you don't need to because they don't suffer. Suffering in nature, an animal.
I think it's just kind of too insane to say that no animal ever suffers, right? Too insane. Okay. Valerie. What's
Hi.
good?
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good.
Great.
Okay. So I agree with you. I just think that I think humans, because we were biologically made to continue our species. So I feel like humans, like it's almost in our DNA to procreate, to form families, all that kind of stuff. I feel like I think it would be hard to get to that point, at least with humans. We can talk into other forms of life like bacteria, fungi. I feel like they would thrive unless our environment becomes so catastrophic to where bacteria and fungi can't survive. But in general, let's just say because they're life forms too. Let's talk about humans and larger organisms. We just have this biological need to have children and all that. And so I feel like it would be very hard to have extinction completely.
Yeah.
Unless it's artificial extinction.
Nobody is saying that extinction is going to be easy.
Yeah, I think it would have to be artificial, which I think that, and I mean, this is to be honest, I feel like that's that's the trajectory of AI, because it'll start, increasing our water usage. It'll start decreasing labor availability. Basic needs will be harder and then kind of like what you were saying about suffering, I mean, I'm specifically talking about humans. I feel like humans put a lot of suffering into other humans, and there's just no limit to it.
Yeah, all suffering is bad, right? And even if there's no suffering today, there could be terrible suffering tomorrow. So the risk of suffering is almost just as bad as the real thing, and is as important. So we need to have zero risk of suffering, zero risk of victims. And that's what our movement is working to achieve in the only way physically possible, which is extinction.
So how do you, are you guys talking about promoting artificial extinction, which is obviously wars and famine and things like that? Or
no, because that doesn't actually lead to extinction. Even if you had World War III, it wouldn't lead to any kind of extinction, right? For example, the asteroids that wiped out most of the dinosaurs, they had something along the lines of this power of 1 billion nuclear bombs. And they still didn't cause total extinction, right? So, war and famine is not a realistic way to cause any form of extinction. We've got life forms at the bottom of the ocean, right? So, essentially extinction has to be carried out in an organized, structured way, a scientific way. We already control animal populations on the planet, right? We've always controlled our environment. So it's just a case of creating a suffering-free world, essentially.
I think it would be hard for people to be okay with being hey, I'm okay with suicide or unaliving myself. People wouldn't agree with that.
Yeah, we're against that anyway.
Oh, okay. So then what are
humanity,
you guys?
So humanity has to stay strong and healthy for as long as it takes to help other life. We also support universal extinction. So the universe is quite likely teeming with life forms that need our help. So humanity is the vehicle for helping others, and we need that vehicle to stay as strong and healthy and as powerful as possible.
No, I agree with you. I think the only way that like could be achieved, because there's always going to be people who follow like instinct, and our instinct is to have children. Um, you'd have to like create like mass infertility from birth. And if you create that, then the birth rate will go down to zero.
Yeah, so we're actually against sterilization. Now, it could become necessary somehow, like you say. But the thing is about sterilizing animals is that firstly, it's really bad for their hormones and their brains and stuff. So it actually kind of messes them up. And secondly, it doesn't prevent those life forms from suffering, right? And from being trapped in suffering. So euthanasia is actually far more effective and more ethical than sterilization.
Okay, that makes sense. And like people, I'm not like promoting all of that, stuff, but I do see what you're saying, because I feel like there's just like an endless cycle. People are always unaliving each other over money, and that desire for power and money and evil never goes away. So it's just like a constant thing, So I
Yeah,
kind of
but
understand.
a lot of those people that you're talking about that unalive each other, they're still the lucky ones, right? If you really think about the worst victims, you've got babies that are born with, brain cancer and bone cancer, and just extreme chronic pain for their entire life, and then a cruel death as well. So the worst off victims need it the most, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Well, sorry, that's all I wanted to say, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming on, and consider checking our website, proextinction.com. You can learn more about us there.
Okay.
Cheers. All right. Hello.
Hello. So I'm curious. So this really is unironic that
Correct. It's real.
this is an actual movement. So what's your view on free will?
We don't believe in it.
Okay, but and so your will is what is there is one.
We don't have free will either. We are bound by empathy, responsibility, and compassion to work towards a suffering-free world.
So the people who are subject to your extinction they don't have a choice in the matter.
They could choose to do the right thing and help us prevent billions of more years of suffering.
Do you believe that suffering is a zero-sum issue, where any suffering equals all suffering, or do you believe that some suffering could be, let's say, childbirth, the pain and suffering of childbirth, and the suffering over 9-month period of gestation is not mitigated by the rest of the time where this child brings not only the mother but the entire family joy and happiness?
Look, only the lucky ones benefit from being forced to exist, right? That's the problem.
So you're saying that on balance, the world suffers more than it benefits?
No. Well, firstly, we're saying yes to that question. But more importantly, no one deserves to suffer for any reason, especially for the benefit of others, right? There should be a zero tolerance policy on creating victims and creating extreme suffering.
So you do understand that your stance is counter to everything in nature.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so your stance is that nature should not exist.
Correct.
Yeah. So why are you against suicide? what is the issue with, if you believe that all suffering should cease to exist, a good place to start is with yourself. If you believe that suffering is a an evil that should not be tolerated, then why not start with yourself? Why not? I mean, you can erase all suffering in the world for yourself. And anybody else who feels the same way can erase all suffering in the universe for themselves and not impede on other people's right to choose suffering along with joy and the beauty of existence.
If activists working to help others cease to exist, then the others won't get helped, right? So it's we have to think outside of just ourselves, and think about others and help
Well,
them.
you're in rarefied air because you belong to a very small subset of people who want to help humanity against
We
humanity's
want to help all
will.
life. We want to help all life,
So
including
you joined eugenicists and communists who justify democide in pursuit of a better world. You belong in that category right there, who are willing to do to hurt people to the point of making them not exist in order to achieve your objective, whether they want to or not. Your philosophy is so amazing that it must be forced on humanity.
I mean, it is the ultimate ideology, really, that no one should have to suffer, right?
No, the ultimate
There's nothing
the ultimate ideology is life. I mean, and that's exhibited by the fact that we are here discussing this. The ultimate ideology is the opposite of what you're proposing. Life is what is the most efficacious philosophy in existence. Yours is the opposite.
But if your balance that you're essentially describing is getting babies abused and tortured, then it's not a good one.
Who says that that's the exclusive the exclusive existence of babies?
No one.
Nobody. I mean, nobody disagrees that no babies should be tortured. Nobody disagrees that.
But you are saying that they should continue to be tortured so that others can have fun, right?
I am not.
But that is effectively your position.
No, I am saying that life is not a neat and tidy thing. I'm saying that life is not an absolute. Some suffering does not equal total suffering.
No one said it does.
As a matter of fact, suffering is a requisite for a meaningful, fulfilled life. Because if you didn't have suffering, then you would not appreciate the opposite of suffering.
I agree, but what's your point?
The point is that all life is in pursuit of more life.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Most people don't willingly die. Most people are in pursuit of more life. The instinct for survival.
It's animalistic.
There's a reason we have an instinct for survival. And if you let's say somebody strapped you to a railroad track, and you had 4 hours on that railroad track, perfectly comfortable, ready for this, just waiting for this train to come and run you over. You would be reasonable to say to yourself, gosh, there's so many things I haven't done. I haven't gotten married. I really like that girl that I work with. I've never seen the Arc de Triomphe. I've never swam in the Indian Ocean. There's all these things that I haven't done. I really wish that I wasn't tied to these tracks. That's not simply the instinct for survival. That's a desire to live. And whether or not, you, maybe you would be more sanguine about this and just say, well, when the train comes, the train comes. But I guarantee you that, anybody else that you strap to those train tracks are going to want the same thing. And what gives you the right to make the decision for everybody on the planet that they shouldn't be here?
Because essentially we have, billions of years of victims depending on us, essentially.
You create billions of years of victims by making that decision for them.
You can't have
that's
but
entirely
they don't even
arrogant.
exist yet. So
It's so arrogant of you to make the decision
Why?
for everybody else. That's not your decision to make. You don't have rights
everyone
to
else,
anybody else's body.
You see, everyone else is already making that decision for the others that are in condemning them to be tortured, basically.
No,
Yeah.
I've not condemned. I'm living here and have not condemned one person to torture.
But
except for maybe my wife, when she had
think
to.
about it this way, though, right? If we could delete the universe and prevent babies from being tortured to death, it would be a good thing. But you wouldn't do it, right? So you would condemn those babies to be tortured, right? So that others can have fun. So that's wrong. And you are making that decision. You're the one condemning babies to be tortured. We're the ones saying that that's wrong. We need to put a stop to it.
No, I'm allowing everybody else to make their own decision.
But you're also allowing babies to be tortured, and that's the problem.
You take the choice. You take the choice completely away. I leave all options open.
Freedom away to torture babies. Absolutely.
No, you take away freedom.
You take away the freedom to torture babies. Yes.
I give freedom for babies to grow and fall in love and enjoy arts and breathe fresh air
But again, that same freedom is irrefutably going to get babies tortured. So, are you on the side of the victims or the lucky ones? Okay. Alrighty. Hello.
Hello.
How do?
Where to even begin with this? Okay, I guess to be crass, why have you not ended your own life then?
So if I did that, then essentially I would be contributing towards the suffering machine continuing, right? Allowing it to continue. So it's a big machine.
No, I'm pretty sure. I honestly think that by staying alive, you're adding more to. You're adding more interaction. You're adding your life into the pool. If you were really about this ideology, you would just unalive yourself. Honestly, I think that's logical because you really don't think that you make an impact in the world such that the world would keep going, providing interesting conversations. You don't think you're giving people energy.
Well, we're growing the movement to make it possible to end all suffering. If you opt out of that, then you're allowing it to continue. So, yeah, that's just stupid. Yeah, you win, dude. Sure. Go have fun with that. Telling people to unalive themselves. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. That's a pretty grim subject you got going on here.
It's a grim reality that we live in.
Yeah, I know. And I see your side and I see other people's side. And what I really just want to say is that even if you go into the universe and get rid of every life everywhere and everything, there'll be no suffering. But life is suffering. I mean, it's sad and
Life
it's
is suffering
pathetic.
terribly, yeah.
And I wish it would all go away, but unfortunately, it is a sad part of life that people suffer and others don't.
Anything. You have to take action.
But if you get rid of all life, then you got rid of all suffering. That makes sense. But then there's no life to enjoy life itself.
Yeah, but then there's no suffering, and that's more important.
Yeah, but you'll be dead and there won't be any life. You won't be around anymore.
Well, what would that matter?
Well, it would matter. Well, if you don't think life matters, then like the other guy's telling you to do something crazy with yourself. I mean, why exist in something that you just don't believe in any of it?
Look,
There must be
babies,
something that you believe in besides
babies are being forced to
non-suffering and
exist.
death.
Right? Babies are being forced to exist and getting tortured, right? You're saying we should just forget about it and unalive ourselves and allow it to continue. We're saying
No, I
no.
don't think we should unalive ourselves.
We have to take action to stop it, right? We can't just wish for it to happen.
Well, we have to get rid of the evil things in the world and
Yeah,
embrace the good.
the most evil thing is life being forced to exist and to suffer, right? So only extinction prevents this wrong.
Well, I don't know. I was born in a different era. I believe that all life is precious. I've suffered greatly in my life, but I don't ever think about ending it or whatever. I
Well,
look at those things
you're
in
a
my
lucky
life
one.
and say
You're
that
lucky.
those are
You're
things
lucky,
that made me me and who I am as an
You know, that's like a
individual.
billionaire saying, "Oh, you just need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps or whatever," right? It's someone in a position of extreme privilege, justifying their privilege by saying that babies that are getting tortured just need to chin up, man up, basically, right?
But why is it all about babies? What about women suffering and men suffering and
Yeah,
just
all suffering
everybody
is bad.
suffering?
All suffering is bad, but the majority of victims on this planet are babies.
Well, why don't we just get rid of all the humans and allow the rest of the life to exist? Because we seem to be the major factor in all the suffering and the hurt and
No,
the
no,
world
no,
being
no. The vast
destroyed.
majority
And
of suffering on this planet is completely independent of human existence. Wild animals have the worst conditions. They are the most numerous, and they suffer the most, right?
well, I think
And their
I think what it
conditions.
really comes down to is that humans were given the ability to think beyond what animals think. And that's what our downfall
Were they?
is, because you're reading so much into everything instead of just living your life. You're hung up on this premise that everything has to die to stop suffering. That's a horrible
It's more
existence
about
for you.
prevention. It's
I
more
think
about not being forced to exist, right? So it's more about prevention. The vast majority of those that we have to help haven't been forced to exist yet. So we need to stop them from being forced to exist to prevent their torture.
well, then why don't we just euthanize all women or get rid of their ability to have births? That would take care of it.
Well, it wouldn't actually, because that would do nothing to help animals.
Well, that's just the nature of things, man. You're trying to change an evolutionary
Nature isn't
change.
it being
You're
nature
literally
isn't
trying
a good
to change
justification.
how evolution works, and you're not going to do it no matter what you do. So if you do something crazy like just kill people because you don't think babies should suffer, what kind of talk is that?
Well,
I mean, what happened to you, man?
Not talk that we're saying.
No, seriously, man. What happened to you when you were younger that made you have this outside on life and
Trolling, basically. All right. Looks like Eric wants to come back on.
Hello.
Hey, welcome back.
Yo. So I have a question.
Sure.
What are you doing? Like, how are you helping with this?
So I joined the movement a year ago. I've been doing activism ever since, making videos, loads of stuff, right? I've
How long
recently.
have you been helping with this? Quote unquote helping.
Yeah, so step one is to grow and develop the movement. So we're getting new activists on board. They're going out and spreading the message as well. I recently made the website. I kind of got the Discord up and running. Luke, who's in the chat, also did that with us. I've recently gotten our podcast, which has 23 episodes up and running on all major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. We're developing the ethics and fleshing it out. We're getting new activists on board. So it's like any movement. You have to grow it and develop it to make the objectives possible.
Okay. So, how long do you think the universe has been around?
It's like 14 billion years, right?
Like a long time. Yeah. And how many people do you think like are living things with conscious as high as ours that can think as intelligent as us? How many people do you think were born that had the same ideology as you and the same belief and spent their entire life trying to solve this issue and just wasted it because they can't solve it in their lifetime? Like, you're gonna die anyways, right?
So yeah, it's possible that we won't see, achieve the goals of the mission within our lifetime, but we're making it possible for the next generation, making it easier, right?
And how long this has been going? You think it's just gonna end in the next generation?
Not necessarily, no. Could take longer than that.
So do you think you're helping at all?
Yeah.
Like, what are the
You have to.
chances that you're actually helping? Like, what percent are you helping? And the next years, what are you doing?
Loads of stuff, right? So as everything, as much as possible, essentially, right? If our movement doesn't exist, then the next generation isn't going to have a movement to keep expanding, right?
Okay, if we could put you in like a percentage of how much you're helping, like, what do you think that number would be in the universe? Like,
Yeah, I mean, we don't really need to have some sort of percentage, right? We just we know it's possible, so we just have to do our best to fight for it.
do you think there would even be a number? Do you think it would just keep going because of like, because we don't even know if like, yeah, the Big Bang, but like, what if there was like another universe before this and it just keeps going on forever? Like, do we even know if this ends?
It's a good question. That's kind of the stuff that our movement wants to research and find out, basically.
And
But even if there was another universe after this one, it's still good to prevent suffering in the meantime.
I have a question. If this doesn't end, this is a theory. If this doesn't end, and you're saying to everybody that their life is just suffering and we should just end our lives, we should end everything because it's just suffering.
That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying.
Okay, so how are you helping? What is the belief that we should have?
So we should be, against suffering and forced existence.
Against suffering.
And forced existence, which is, the kind of default, right? So yeah, we should make sure that no life is cruelly forced to exist and to have a bad life. Right? We're on the side of.
How do you determine if a life is cruelly forced to exist?
Well, every life is forced to exist, right? No one asks to be born, and then the unluckiest ones suffer the worst.
I think it's a choice though, because you don't have to be here. I don't have to be here.
Right, but babies can't, make that choice, can they?
Yeah, but is it forever for that baby?
No, but
And
it's
their
still bad
life,
for them.
it's still bad for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously.
I don't know. I just don't think this is helping at all.
It's not helping you, but the victims are depending on us, right?
They're depending on us.
They're depending on extinction to prevent their extreme torture.
We can't help with that.
You might not be
I don't think this is a goal we can achieve.
You might not be able to achieve it, but
I don't think this is a goal I don't think this is a goal we can achieve, humans.
Well, some people are pessimistic about it. Some people are optimistic about it. But nothing's impossible, right? You just have to, especially when you have infinite victims relying on you, right? So we're more motivated than people like yourselves that don't think that suffering should end anyway.
Just hold on, just think about it. You're thinking about a way to end infinite suffering by wiping out everything, infinite life. Like how does this work in your head? How do you think this is going to work out?
I mean, it's extremely realistic and feasible already, right? So I mean, firstly, humanity's already made several species of animal go extinct. We already control the planet, control animal populations at will very easily. We have done since the dawn of humanity, right? So it's not even a new concept, really.
No, I'm talking about like everything. This isn't not like a new concept. I mean like everything
Sure.
dying. That'd be like I don't know if that'd be the first time this happened, but
so the thing, if all animals went extinct tomorrow, the food, supply chains would kind of collapse. Pollination would collapse. The planet would become uninhabitable. So that would be a bad thing. So we have to transition the planet to remove dependency on animals, and have an animal-free world, and then we can continue the mission with universal extinction, basically.
This would probably take like infinite time to do though, right?
Might take a long time, yeah. But what else are you going to do?
So over infinite time, you're going to build a device or build
might not take
figure
infinite
out
time.
over infinite time. We're going to figure out a way.
It might not take infinite time, Eric.
Okay, but it sounds very unlikely.
Yeah, it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Sure. But
so the possibility of this happening as of right now, I feel like it's a very small number, like close to not happening.
The possibility gets bigger every day, right? The movement grows every day. Science and technology improves every day, right? So, extinction 100 years ago would have been very difficult. Today, it's already much more possible. And tomorrow, it will continue to get more possible. Yeah. Simple as that, really. So, we just have to do our best and not look for...
hold on. So you're trying to figure out a way to build something, or you're trying to figure out a way to eliminate everything and infinite life. Like over time, like in the past, probably infinite lives have died already.
Yeah.
Realistically, I don't know. Like we don't know how long this has been going. So I think that's already kind of being handled. Like I think everything's already going to die. This isn't really an issue that you need to solve because all suffering is going to end eventually for everybody anyways. They're all going to die.
You wouldn't see a sadist about to spawn a child in a dungeon and say, allow him to do it because, billions of years from now...
And how would you end that child's suffering? By killing it, right?
No, by preventing it.
By preventing it?
Yeah. Extinction is about prevention, not killing. You can't kill something that doesn't exist yet, but you can prevent it from being tortured.
Yeah, but that's different. Like, it's different. It's different to say, like, you're trying to kill everything versus trying to prevent. Like, because how can you guarantee you can prevent every... That doesn't make sense. You can't... I don't see that as a possibility.
Well,
I just don't.
Like I said,
how do you see nothing? How do you see nothing? How can you see nothing?
If we reduce the animal population, then that's already preventing a lot of suffering, right? So, you're not making any sense. It's already possible.
No. How do you see a world with nothing in it? Like, with nothing.
As the ultimate good, right? No victims, no suffering, no abuse, no torture.
a world with nothing in it probably already exists because it's nothing. That already probably exists where nothing exists.
Okay, but we live in this reality, right? This world where there is suffering, so we should do something about it.
Yeah, and then what happens? There's probably another world out there, right?
I mean, if there's something we can do about it, then we'll
And
try. If
should
not,
we
then
end
we'll
those
do what we
worlds?
can.
Should we end those worlds too? Should we swap worlds and end those ones too? To end
We
their
should do as
suffering?
much as possible.
And then does it just keep going on forever? It just keeps going on forever and ever.
Who knows?
And
Who
forever we're
knows?
just trying to kill everything
You're just
and
trying
end
to
suffering.
find reasons not to help, basically, right? So we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
All right. You let me know when your goal has been met. It's gonna be a while,
It won't
but
happen by itself, will it?
huh?
It's not going to happen by itself. We have to fight for it.
Yeah.
It's no
All
point
right.
waiting.
All right. Good luck with that one.
All right.
Hopefully,
Thanks
you
again,
end all
Eric.
the worlds. I guess. I don't know. I guess
No,
that's your goal.
there are
Hopefully,
multiple worlds. There might not be. Okay.
there might
Anyway,
not be. Who knows? We don't know that.
yeah,
We don't
and
even
we'll
know
find
that.
out. We can look into it.
All right, bro.
All right. Cheers, Eric. Oh boy. So yeah, people just are looking for any excuse. You know, they're saying, you know, how are you going to stop, you know, life from forming in a different galaxy? I can't get on board with this. But you know, that has nothing to do with, you know, the animals on Earth. You know, just because you might not be able to get to the next galaxy doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop a sadist from torturing a baby. Like, how are you going to justify animals and babies getting abused because the future of the movement is unclear at this time? You know, it doesn't make sense. You know, the validity of preventing suffering doesn't depend on what's going to happen a billion years from now. It just simply doesn't. You know, we should just prevent as much suffering as possible in the only practical way. You know, and the thing is, people keep treating life as some sort of inherently valuable thing. Every life is getting forced to exist. They're not asking for it. Okay, so they're not in some queue, you know, lining up for heaven, right? The vast majority are in the queue lining up for hell. You know, if you disagree with that, then, you know, you would have to disagree with the idea that you yourself would rather not be born as a baby that gets eaten alive. I think that would be incredibly dishonest. Obviously, no one wants to get eaten alive as a baby. You know, you're not living any sort of life there. There's no balance. You just get born and have your eyes picked out and get tortured to death, right? So, you know, life is a curse, not a blessing, especially for the vast majority, which is over 99.9% of life. So are you on the side of the victims or the side of, you know, the privileged, the top of the ladder? They're the only ones that benefit from being forced to exist. And even them, even those people have got the blinders on, right? Optimism bias, survival instinct, selfish drives, you know. Maybe they get horny and say, you know, my horniness is more important, right? In the moment. So it's not rational, it's animalistic. We're essentially just debating the overwhelming survival instinct and irrationality that nature forced onto life. It's a myth that humans are rational. It's a myth and delusion that people like to tell themselves. But actually, you know, if you just speak to a person, you'll quickly find out that they're completely insane. And that same insanity is what animals have as well. And it's, it is literally just survival instinct and nerfed empathy. If you had a fully rational brain, then you would have empathy so that you could understand what was happening in the world. You would see, that suffering that must be really bad, right? But by removing that from the brain, nature made it so that animals could kill each other and not feel guilty and survive, right? So that they could reproduce without worrying about the suffering that it would cause. So, it's obvious that reproduction is something that's done without thinking it through, without considering the ethics and morality. Obviously, no animal considers what it's doing. They just go off and do it, even if their conditions are really bad. And the children are guaranteed to face extreme suffering. The animals aren't like, okay, I've settled down now, I've got a good life, I've got shelter, security, I'm on top of my bills, time to have a kid. No, they just get like shagged by another animal, they get knocked up, and then, most of their children die. That is the absolute reality and truth. Okay? And, humans are doing the same thing. You just have to go to a council estate and walk through it and see the crazy shit that's going on. Like, you've got couples pushing a pram and, they're smoking skunk and blowing it on the kid's face, a baby. Are these responsible parents? Is this something that desperately has to be allowed and protected? No. So, humans are just animals, really, and it's a myth that we're not, right? We aren't some divine beings, we're just slightly more developed monkeys. But we're not even fully evolved. Which is why you have, clowns ruling the world. You have hatred, violence, racism. If what I was saying isn't true, then we would have world peace, we would have cooperation, we would have empathy. But that tribalism and ability to discriminate, it's not just about not feeling guilt. It's also about finding reasons to justify your selfishness and your survival, right? It's about saying, I hate that person, they're a bad person, so I can kill them, I can take their stuff. So it's more than just a lack of guilt and empathy. It's actually hatred, discrimination. All of these horrible things are literally tools of nature to keep the species selfishly focusing on its own survival, taking from others, eating other animals alive. So yeah, we live in an upside down world, basically. Hello.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, okay. I don't really know why we should stop all unfair suffering. Why should we unalive all animals first, for example?
Because suffering is too extreme to be acceptable.
Okay, too extreme to be acceptable. What do you mean by that?
So we're not talking about stubbing your toe or something like that. We're talking about, being tortured.
Okay.
So, it's a terrible thing. It's urgent that it gets stopped. And no one should have to suffer.
So, for example, I've heard some vegans that talk about how we should probably unalive most, if not all, apex predators, I could see why to reduce significantly, suffering from like maybe herbivores. But when it comes to herbivores, why should we like unalive them?
No animal is safe from suffering, and predation is just one of the many, many types of suffering. So that's just one type, right?
Okay, so you would say that if there's any suffering in a species, we should like push them to extinction.
Not push, but make extinct. It's more about prevention and zero risk, right? Unless you have the guaranteed safety of extinction, then there's going to be unlimited risk, right? You can't really put a cap or a limit on how much suffering, the beings that are being forced to exist are going to suffer.
Okay, so I think earlier you said something about people that are disabled and saying that it should be okay to euthanize disabled babies. Like let's say there was a country where you would have no legal repercussion if you went ahead and like euthanized all disabled babies. You would say that that's like something that is morally permissible to do.
It would have to be within context, right? But I think forcing life to exist is bad, full stop. But when it's got extreme disabilities, that's even worse. And if we can prevent that, then that would be a good thing.
What type of disabilities are considered extreme according to you? Like, what's the boundary between like a disability that you think shouldn't exist and someone who's like disabled and should be able to exist for the remaining time before extinction, right?
There's a lot of considerations that go into it. One of the biggest ones is wild animals. For every human that exists, millions of wild animals are prevented from existing due to resources, like land being taken up. But it's a difficult question. It's not really something that we would. I will try and answer this one. Actually, it is a good question. I would say that if we want babies to exist, then we should just optimize that, right? And not have babies that are suffering or not going to have a good life, essentially. I don't have all the answers on it, but we should try and prevent extreme suffering where we can. And you can't guarantee that anyone's going to have a good life. So let me try and think about this, right? So if the world became extinctionist tomorrow, what would we do about these babies? Usually extinctionists, their logic kind of is anchored to the greater good, right? To the mission of achieving a suffering-free world. So it would have to be in context in relation to that. But I can't really give the definitive answer necessarily, but I would lean towards saying that yes, we should, not have children with disabilities.
Okay, so you're pro-abortion, right? Like in most contexts.
Not necessarily, because we need as many humans as possible. For every human that exists, again, there's going to be fewer wild animals suffering. So human suffering is by default worth less in the current situation, where having a human is going to prevent more suffering for wild animals. So we would rather have more humans, but again, it depends on the situation. If there was a good reason for the abortion, then yeah, we'd support it. And we don't want anyone to be forced to bring up a child that's going to have a bad life because they don't want to look after it. But again, if the hypothetical is an extinctionist world, then someone else would just take the baby off their hands and raise it.
Well, you don't even have to go to an extinctionist world. Like, let's say the West becomes extinctionist? Like, what prevents them from doing that to poorer countries that have less resources that clearly won't help them with their causes, right? Poorer countries tend to be more religious, therefore less prone to these types of ideologies. They also tend to like have less of an ability to react to, you know, Western power. So it seems like in those conditions, if just the West was extinctionist, it should be permissible to just like go and unalive disabled babies in Africa and people that don't have a sufficient IQ to like help the cause, right?
Oof, that's a really good question. Yeah, for us, it would come down to, you know, what's going to support the mission the best. Are we at war? But, you know, if they were just kind of getting on with their own thing, we would be. I mean, you know, one thing we're working on is improving genetics for the population and for the world. So, you know, sort of, we would probably rather they transition to have their future generations with better genetics, essentially. Wiping them out sounds like it would be very violent, very difficult. You know, if we had like magic and stuff, maybe we would just replace them with something else. I don't know. But yeah.
Do you not think that the extinction of animals will also be violent though? Because it seems like you would have to like catch them first, especially I think you were talking about euthanasia. So like especially for
I don't think
predators.
you really catch every animal. You know, you've got like plankton in the ocean and stuff. So, you know, some extinction or euthanasia might require some pain, but it's impossible to cause more pain and suffering than you prevent. Right, billions of years of more of it, and also, in the same way that it's impossible to cause more than you're preventing. You know, if it takes a day to carry out euthanasia on an animal, you're preventing, and it's painful. You're preventing, you know, years of its life that's going to be more suffering. So we just have to kind of do what's fastest in a sense, because anything slower is going to cause lots of suffering. So that's a big consideration.
But what do you consider the fastest means? Because like to me the fastest means would just be like capturing large amounts of for example herbivores, euthanizing them, but that seems like still rather violent because the predators would obviously die out since they wouldn't have food, right?
Yeah, it has to be done in a gradual way, in a phased way, and you also have to technologically and scientifically remove the planet's dependence on animals. If all animals disappeared today, the planet would become uninhabitable for humans, which would be a bad thing, because that would prevent us from firstly making sure that life doesn't come back, and also trying to cause extinction for the rest of the universe.
Right, but when you say cause extinction for the rest of the universe, would that mean that humans would have to subside for like hundreds and hundreds of years until they find alien life or all alien life in the universe?
So potentially, we might be able to rely on AI or AGI and robots to do it for us, in which case there'd be no point in humanity existing. But one major consideration is that we would have to be 100% certain that we can rely on them with no risk, basically. For example, solar flares can knock out and destroy technology and electronics. You know, we'd have to be sure that the software and operating system in these robots is never going to go wrong and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a very good chance that humanity will have to continue for a very long time.
Okay. I mean, you also talked about how, like we shouldn't like project people into suffering, meant by people, I mean sentient beings, into suffering if it's the case that they can't choose it. What about people who choose to like suffer? Is that also bad? Like, should we also get them to extinction even if the harm is something that they choose?
Yeah, I mean, if they're just, they want to. The thing is that no life form is actually rationally thinking about what's in their best interest. For example, you have depressed people that are begging for death every day, but they can't bring themselves to do it. Right. So these people, I would include in your example or your question, because just because they aren't opting out doesn't mean that it's not in their best interest, essentially. And in that same sense, we are controlled by our brains, right? So people don't actually have full control. They don't necessarily know what is in their best interest. But ultimately, having no life at all reduces the risk of any suffering or new creation of life that's going to suffer. So ideally, we'd have a zero tolerance policy on any life existing, right? Because it could go and create new life. That's kind of one of the big things about extinction, right? Is that you have to prevent reproduction.
But do you think that unaliving someone is like causing them harm at all?
If they suffer because they're scared of it, or it's going to hurt them during the process, then yeah, all suffering is bad. But non-existence contains no suffering. It just contains safety from suffering.
Right, but what I'm asking is like, are you familiar with certain views of like how unaliving is harmful in philosophy, or not at all?
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, some people believe that the reason why death is mainly harmful is a deprivation of like, future goods in your life. How is depriving like a large number of people from those experiences and causing a lot of suffering, presumably over like the span of like hundreds of years, how is that any better than the people who do torture babies?
Yeah, so it sounds like you're asking, why take away the good, essentially. But because the bad is more important, right? And more urgent. It takes priority, right? In the same way that, if someone is starving to death and someone else has a massive pizza, and the person with the pizza asks you to order them another one, you're probably just going to ignore them and help the person that is starving to death, right? So the victims, the people that need help, they take priority. Those that are privileged and lucky, they're not suffering, right? And ending their privilege doesn't create suffering. It just prevents more suffering.
You don't think that ending a privilege also creates suffering? Like, it definitely does, even if you want to say that it's like a suffering
There is
that
no
is
suffering.
less.
There is no suffering within non-existence, right?
Right, but you're saying that it wouldn't be the case that they would stop to exist immediately. You're just saying that we should like take away the privilege gradually, right? So it is still the case that they would be harmed during that process.
You might have to cause some harm to prevent a larger amount of harm, right? A police officer will tackle a criminal to the ground to stop them from attacking someone else, right? So it's never been the case that you can't cause suffering to stop more suffering.
Okay, so why should I believe also that the principle you talked about earlier is true in every case? Because I agree with the case of the pizza and the starving person, but it doesn't seem like it's applicable to every case.
Well, in terms of every case, right? It's difficult to have any sort of coherent rules or fairness or equality when you've got just unmitigated and uncontrolled suffering and victims, so that some can have fun, right? So it has to be a zero tolerance policy. No one gets to have fun if it means that babies are getting tortured, basically.
So you don't believe that causing harm to beings that are currently sentient is worse than like trying to prevent harm for like future generations possibly that are not yet sentient?
You can't cause more harm with extinction than you prevent. It's physically impossible. Billions of years of suffering outweighs any, momentary pain or fear that you might have or anxiety about extinction.
Why should I believe that though? Like, what's the argument for that? Or the motivation? Not especially a formal.
I mean, essentially removing the animal population from the planet, it's just incomprehensible how that could possibly cause them more harm than it prevents, right?
I mean, I think it's pretty comprehensible. Like, you've talked about stuff that is similar to what other people have already talked about previously to you. Like, I mean, we've had like the Yazis, we've had like communists do similar stuff about extinct, like trying to like unalive a whole bunch of group of people to like either they didn't think that they deserved to live or they thought that their suffering shouldn't like exist. And it seems like most people want to continue living despite the suffering in their life, right? They choose, even if free will is wrong, they choose maybe not entirely by their own like matter of fact.
I mean, no one's making any choice. You bring up a great point. No one's really choosing anything, right? Nature is choosing for you.
Right, but you do agree that even if that's the case, people still are able to make choices, and those choices impact their mental health, their physical health, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's like not free will type of choice, right? So you also agree that other people in the past have tried to like do similar.
No.
You don't think that there's ever been a person that was also an ethicist or that tried to do some type of extinction on the planet?
No.
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 You don't believe that there's philosophers that wrote about similar stuff to what you're talking about?
No.
Or people that had different intent but pursued the same type of goals?
No. The movement only came into existence like 2.5 years ago, right? If I was wrong in my answer to you, then the movement would have already existed.
Yeah, I mean, it does exist. It's just vastly unpopular because of the entailments of the view, right?
No, I mean, there's never been a movement that has said, we need to achieve a suffering-free world in an organized and practical way, right? For example, ethicists are against taking action. They firmly say that we shouldn't do activism and shouldn't try to make it happen.
No, they do try to make it happen. They just think that even the smallest actions do like pursue.
How are ethicists trying to achieve extinction, right? They are quite literally, verbatim, saying that we shouldn't try to achieve extinction, but it might be a good thing if it did happen, right? So they're wishing for it, but saying, I won't lift a finger to make it happen.
Maybe I'm confused, but are ethicists not just like a branch of anti-natalists that believe that despite the being sentient, we should still unalive them because of the imbalance between suffering and pleasure?
No, ethicists are usually anti-natalist, yeah, but ethicists are, part of their position is that they're against organized activism to achieve a suffering-free world.
Right, okay.
That's a fact. I'm not making that up.
Okay, sure. So let's say that if there were people that had the same... Sorry, I got a call. I'll have to go soon, but if there were people that had similar goals to you, but maybe not the same intent, like, I mean, that has happened in the past, like unaliving disabled people because they didn't help the state. Like, I mean, that's been seen before to prevent, like, one, their suffering and also suffering of other people. Because obviously, if you have more money going to disabled people, then you have less money going to other causes. I mean, that's been done before. Like, eugenics is nothing new. So, I mean, it's pretty clear, I think, how it could be the case that stopping all harm by extinction could go very, wrong.
But if you don't try, then it's just going to continue forever, basically.
Why not try to reduce suffering by a large measure rather than eliminate all suffering, right? That seems to be a more plausible goal.
I mean, we could do both, right? But if you have the choice to end suffering and instead reduce it slightly, then it's unfair to the victims.
How is it unfair to the victims that want to keep?
If you reduced slavery a little bit instead of ending slavery when you had the choice to, right? It's unfair to the victims.
Right. So let's say that a slave said, I want to keep living, but the person who wanted to end slavery chose to, like, in order to end slavery, we should just unalive all
Yes,
black
they
people.
did end slavery, right? They didn't say let's reduce
Right.
slavery. They did the right thing. They fought to end slavery.
What would you say if
You would be on the side of the people saying let's not end slavery, basically. You would have been on the
No,
South.
I would be on the side of the people that wouldn't say let's end slavery by unaliving all black people, right? Like, that doesn't seem to be an efficient.
But we're not talking about ending slavery by ending the lives of slaves.
Right, you're not talking about ending suffering
I'm
by
saying that it's unfair to essentially reducing suffering and reducing slavery, like you're suggesting, is a tool of the oppressors as an excuse to not end suffering. It's let's reduce it a tiny bit so that we can keep having fun at their expense. And maybe they won't complain as much if we reduce it slightly. We'll give the slaves pillows. They still have to work all day, every day, but we'll give them pillows so that they shut up. That's basically what you're advocating for.
No, I think it's quite the opposite. It seems
Anyway,
like
thanks for coming on. It's not the opposite to the victims, right, who need it. It's not the opposite to them. You're saying let's allow babies to keep being abused so that we can benefit. We're saying no, that all of these babies need the prevention of that torture as fast as possible. To say that we should just let the vast majority keep getting abused and maybe we can reduce it slightly, it's wrong. It's evil. So, you're on the side of the lucky ones who are going to benefit from reducing suffering instead of ending it. We're on the side of the ones that need it to be prevented completely, right? If you just reduce it, then what about the ones that need it to be ended? So we're on their side. We're on the side of the victims. We're not on the side of the privileged ones that want to have fun and keep all of this suffering going. Let's turn the suffering machine off. Hello, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on, man? Tell me about this. Tell me about this, let's get rid of everybody so we can stop suffering. Tell me about this shit.
Yeah, we should have a suffering-free world, and we should work to achieve it.
Okay, and how you want to achieve that?
Well,
what's your movement about?
Yeah, so we're working to, actually achieve total extinction. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Difficult thing, obviously. It's a big challenge, but we're taking on that challenge for the sake of those that need it.
Oh, really? You just the saviors and you just decide everybody's lives, huh? That's what you think you are, huh?
I mean, that's not really the way we see it or
well,
feel
that's
about
how it is. That's how we see it, dumbass. So come on, talk to me.
Yeah, well, we're on the side of the victims who are depending on this.
No, you're on the side of yourself because you think you can decide somebody's fate. So you're wrong. You're an AI mimic that's on here
inaction is also an action.
To unalive themselves, bro. I know what you
We're not asking.
And you're a clown. Your whole movement's a clown.
Thanks for coming on. I appreciate your opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. But we are actually against people unaliving themselves. So, let's be clear and not lie. Okay. Where are we? Yeah. Let's kind of reflect a little bit, shall we? Oh, okay. Never mind. Hello.
What's up?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So what I would say to this, right, is that this is a very philosophical topic, but so like a lot of angles to approach it, but like have you ever thought of the fact that suffering is a personal experience and it's also a contemporary experience?
Contemporary. Wow. I would say that suffering has always existed and is by no means contemporary.
But it didn't, though. Right. So someone born, right, in let's say like Tudor England didn't think of themselves as suffering.
But you don't have to think or even understand what suffering is. You don't even have to know the definition of suffering to be able to suffer.
Yeah, but so what I'm trying to say, right? What if there was someone in the future, like 3100, and they looked back at us and they were like, "Oh my God, they didn't know about the glurg concept. Like they were in pain. Like that's the equivalent of what you're doing to people in the past and people in the present, right? Because you can just make up, anything you want. You can just make up a concept you want and then say that other people are experiencing it. That doesn't make it true for them, right?
I mean, animal suffering has never really changed throughout history. And I would say that it has virtually no chance of improving either, right? How are you going to improve conditions for plankton?
Yes, but to get super technical, the point of plankton, that would you agree that there is not necessarily a goal for evolution for all life, right? Or the goal for evolution
You would
for
have
all
to believe
life.
in God to think, to be a religious person, to think that there's some sort of higher purpose or meaning, right?
What I'm trying to say, right, is like so like you have like bacteria or plankton, right? Their main goal actually is to have as many individual units as possible. Probably, if you could, amorphize
They don't
their
have a goal or an
philosophy.
objective, actually. They're just forced to exist and to respond to their biological motivators, right? Like hormones and stuff like that. So they're not sitting around reading the plankton book of, what are our goals today?
Yes. So, but humans sit around and read, a book that's like, 5 steps to a good life, right? So
Humans are a minority, right? So
yeah. But like what I think, I don't know. I mean personally, when it comes to human suffering, I would say that you just gotta lift some weights and get some puss, and then you'll like feel better.
But babies that have born with like bone cancer and brain cancer and just have an awful life and then just die, right?
Yeah.
They can't really lift weights because the disease is ravaging their body.
Yes, and in that case, I mean, when it comes to diseases like that, you just have to like feel sympathy for them, and
Well, no, you can do more than just pretend to feel sympathy for them, right? You can actually prevent them from being tortured.
Well, I think if you asked them, like, okay, if you asked them, right, what they would say is that they want.
Well, they can't talk, right? Babies can't talk.
Well, okay. When you ask, so
Can't ask a baby a
let's say we can assume that if they could, what they would say is like,
But that's
stop
not a
that.
realistic. Let's stay grounded in reality. You know?
Okay, let's talk about a child then. The child would probably say something like "stop my pain" or "stop it from hurting." You know,
You
what's
don't
to
know that.
say like what's to say like
Children can't really think properly, can they?
just because you're an adult doesn't necessarily mean you have a more complex thought than that. What I'm trying to say
Well,
is
you definitely do. Okay. Obviously the brain develops. Now, obviously, adults are just as inflicted by irrationality, but uh, you know, uh, can a child do maths as easily as an adult can? No. Can they be as serious as an adult can? Can they, carry out a job or a responsibility like an adult can? No. So, I mean, both are irresponsible and incapable of, doing the right thing. But I would say that obviously, the younger you are, the less capable you are.
right. That is very true. But my point was, when you talk about ending a child who's experiencing suffering, like when you talk about ending their suffering, you could talk about like giving them some medicine, right? You don't necessarily have to talk about um, ending them altogether, because really the constraint isn't that they are suffering. It's the constraint is just the technology of the time that they were born into, right?
Well, the thing is that as long as life exists, there's always going to be a risk of extreme suffering, right? You can't provide 100% safety and, from suffering and the risk of unlimited suffering, because life is just too complex, too complicated, too diverse. There's too many threats, too many risks, too many things that can go wrong. We don't live in a perfect world, okay? It's quite the opposite. And so if I have a child now, I can't guarantee it's going to have a good life. But if I don't have a child, I can guarantee it won't have a bad life.
No, the only thing you guarantee is that somewhere else, someone else will seize the agenda. That's the only thing you can guarantee.
Yeah, I agree. But, the thing is that we have to get towards that total goal of total extinction, and then there will be no one to seize that agenda.
But you realize that there's no point, because you couldn't guarantee that across the universe. Like,
well, we can try.
You literally can't. Like, there's too much like space to travel. There's more space to travel than total energy available to do it, to do the travel. And that's when you only talk about the two-dimensional travel. When you add in time as the third dimensional coordinate, you have all of the universe to cover, plus all of the possible states in time that you could be in from like start to beginning. There's just no reason to attempt it.
Well, no, there is. I mean, the thing is, humanity has only just begun to develop science and technology, right? So it would be very naive and unfair to the victims to say that we're not even going to try, right? So we should try as much as we can and not try as little as we can, like you're suggesting.
I mean, dude, it's just straight up impossible. It's like,
but there's no reason to believe that, right? That it's like 100% impossible.
It's just, I think that if it were possible, probably another civilization would already have done
Well,
it.
that's just wishful thinking, right? That's hopeful thinking, right? So we can't, just find reasons not to help. Okay, we have to do our best to help instead of do the opposite, which is what you're suggesting.
Yes, yes. I think you are like mentally disturbed.
But you're the mentally disturbed one if you're saying that just because you might not be able to reach the far end of the universe means that we shouldn't prevent babies being abused on Earth, right?
I'm
That
just
is what
saying.
you're saying, right?
No. What I'm saying is that
That is what you're saying.
there's just no point. Like,
Okay. So there's no point preventing babies from being abused on Earth because we might not be able to get to the end of the universe. Bruh. Like, listen to yourself. Jesus. We had this with a previous caller today, saying that, we should let babies get abused because we might not be able to get to the next galaxy. It's like, bruh, it doesn't make any sense. Extinctionism is about doing as much as possible, preventing as much suffering as possible. It's already extremely possible on Earth. So, all right, Grace, if you want to join, let's have a look.
Yeah, I'm joined.
How's it going?
Going well. How you doing?
Good.
Cool. Yeah, it's very interesting. Should all life be made extinct to stop unfair suffering? Are you assuming every single person that's ever lived on this planet has been through unfair suffering, at least to an extent to where they would wish that they were not born?
No.
Okay, so then why should all life be made extinct?
Because it's the only way to put an end to suffering.
Well, now you're just going against the same exact question I asked you. So,
well, no,
your own person.
Unless you prevent future generations, right?
Is this your personal opinion on your own life, or are you speaking for every person in existence?
I represent the movement, the pro-extinction movement.
Basically. All right, okay. So you didn't know what to say there. Exactly. That's my point. Is why are you talking?
Okay, didn't know what to say there. I answered your loaded question in a way that didn't, carry out your loaded intentions. Boo-hoo. All right. Loading. Okay, give it a second. Let's try and reflect on that, What was he asking exactly? Firstly, they asked, do you think everyone suffers? And I was like, well, in a way that they would prefer to not exist. That's obviously not true, right? And he was trying to essentially thrust an absurd opinion on me, which I said, nope, don't believe in something silly like that. Couldn't believe it. And then, tried to go with something else absurd. Stop being absurd, please. All right. Drank Sinatra. Anyone else? Let's have a look. What is going on? Oh, I can add someone as a moderator. Needs to be added. That's a good use of this blip. You know what? Actually, I've been streaming for 3.5 hours now. It's actually the longest I've ever streamed. Got to 60 on my second streaming, but only about 30 today. Maybe it's because we had such terrible restrictions yesterday that I've heard that you might have to do a few good streams without restrictions before you get fully unrestricted. So hopefully this will count as the first one towards that, because I haven't actually had any restrictions yet on this stream. So that's good. I'm going to call it for now. Again, it's been 3.5 hours. That's the longest I've gone. Had a lot of fun though. It's just a shame when people, are defending suffering, downplaying it, and especially when they're telling me to unalive myself. It's sad, guys. Do better. Until the next episode host. We are actually trying to get more people from the movement to start live streaming. Now, we do a lot of live streams on YouTube with debates, but we only do single person debates. So usually it's me and someone else, or just me, but it'll be debating one person for like an hour and a half. If you want to check those debates out, bearing in mind that the guests usually get destroyed, you can search Pro Extinction on YouTube, find the channel, and go to the live stream section and check it out. Loads of debates on there, long form debates against one person. So, yeah, we want to get more of our movement streaming. So hopefully that's going to happen. Stay tuned for that. And for my YouTube watchers who will be watching this after I upload it on YouTube, I will try and give you the videos or links or whatever to any future debates from other people in our movement. Someone actually said that they want to, in the movement, said that they want to watch me stream today to get a bit more confidence so that they can do the exact same thing I'm doing. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Let's hope they go ahead and do it. For anyone else that's interested, you can join us on Discord and join the conversation. Become an activist, join the movement, help us end suffering, right? Google search Abolish Suffering Discord, or go to our website, proextinction.com. The contact links are on there, and you can learn all about the movement, read our FAQ, our manifesto, get in touch, send me an email if you really want to. Few people have done that. The email address is on our website, along with our link to our Discord server. You can come and talk to us and ask more questions, or get on board, ask how you can do activism with us and work towards achieving a suffering-free world. So thanks for joining, guys, and probably not going to stream again today, but maybe tomorrow.